The shotgun trembled in Lena's hands as the outlaw smiled at her through the darkness. Your husband's a dead man walking, little girl. And you? You're just going to be the widow who watched it happen. That's where this story reaches its breaking point. But it begins months earlier, when a desperate woman made a deal with the devil himself to save everything she loved. This is a tale of secrets, survival, and the thin line between salvation and damnation in the unforgiving Texas frontier. Stay with me until the end. You won't believe how this unfolds. And when you're done, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see just how far this story travels. Now, let me take you back to where it all started. The morning her father stopped fighting was the morning Lena Whitaker knew they were finished. She found him in the barn just after sunrise, sitting on an overturned bucket with his head in his hands, shoulders shaking in a way she'd never seen before. Not when her mother died. Not when the fever took her younger brother. Not even during the first year of drought when they lost half the herd. But this was different. Pa? Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. He didn't look up, just sat there holding a piece of paper that trembled between his calloused fingers. The early light cut through the gaps in the barn walls, illuminating dust motes that hung suspended like they had all the time in the world. They didn't. They're coming Friday, he said finally. His voice had gone flat, dead. Bank's sending men to take the land. Lena felt something cold slide down her spine. Friday? That's 3 days. 3 days. He laughed, but there was no humor in it, just a broken sound that made her chest hurt. 22 years I've worked this land. 22 goddamn years. She moved closer, boots scuffing against the dirt floor. The barn smelled like hay and leather, and the particular kind of rot that came from things slowly dying. 2 skeletal cows stood in their stalls, ribs showing through their hides like xylophone keys. They'd sold everything else months ago. How much do we owe? Does it matter? He finally looked up at her, and what she saw in his eyes scared her more than the number ever could. Defeat. Complete and absolute. $1,500. Might as well be $15,000. $1,500. The words sat between them like a death sentence. Lena's mind raced, scrambling for solutions that didn't exist. They had maybe $30 to their name. The ranch wasn't producing. They'd already borrowed against everything they owned. Her father had spent the last 6 months writing to every bank, every lender, every wealthy rancher within 100 miles. Nothing. There has to be something. There's nothing. He cut her off, and the finality in his voice made her stop. I've tried everything, Lena. Everything. And I failed. I failed your mother. I failed you. I failed this whole goddamn family. Don't say that. It's true. He stood up, the movement making him seem older than his 48 years. You should start packing. Maybe you can go stay with your aunt and... I'm not leaving. Lena, I said I'm not leaving. The words came out sharper than she intended, echoing off the barn walls. One of the cows shifted nervously. Her father stared at her for a long moment. Then his face crumpled. What am I supposed to do? Tell me, because I don't know anymore. I don't know how to fix this. She wanted to have an answer, wanted to be strong enough to carry them both. But she was 22 years old, and the weight of their world was crushing her just as surely as it was crushing him. We'll figure something out, she said, knowing it was a lie even as the words left her mouth. He just looked at her with those defeated eyes and walked past her toward the house. She stood alone in the barn, surrounded by the ghosts of what they used to have, and felt her own resolve start to crack. 3 days. The town of Hollow Creek had exactly 1 bank, 1 general store, 1 saloon, and approximately 300 people who all knew everyone else's business before it became business. Lena rode in that afternoon because sitting at the ranch doing nothing was driving her insane. The horse beneath her, a 15-year-old mare named Juniper, moved with the tired gait of an animal that had seen better days. They both had. Main Street was its usual sleepy self. A few horses tied to hitching posts, some kids playing in the dust, Mrs. Henderson sweeping her porch and eyeing Lena with that particular look women got when they knew you were in trouble but didn't want to ask about it directly. Lena tied Juniper outside the general store and went in, the bell above the door announcing her arrival with a cheerful jingle that felt obscene given everything else. Lena! Martha Davies looked up from behind the counter, her round face breaking into a smile that faltered when she got a good look at Lena's expression. Oh, honey, you look like you haven't slept in a week. Haven't slept much in a month. Lena tried to return the smile and failed. You have any of that coffee left? The strong stuff? Always. Martha was already moving toward the back. Let me get you some, on the house. Martha, I can pay. Don't even start. The older woman poured coffee from a pot that looked like it had been sitting there since yesterday, which meant it would be strong enough to strip paint. How's your paw holding up? There it was, the question everyone wanted to ask, but phrased carefully, like approaching a spooked horse. He's... Lena took the cup Martha offered, wrapping both hands around it even though the day was warm. He's managing. Martha's expression said she didn't believe that for a second, but she was kind enough not to push. Instead, she leaned against the counter, lowering her voice even though they were alone in the store. I heard the bank sent final notice. News travels fast. This is Hollow Creek. News travels before it even happens. Martha paused, choosing her words carefully. Is it true they're coming Friday? Lena nodded, not trusting her voice. Jesus! Martha shook her head. That bastard Thornton. He wouldn't give you another month, another week? He gave us 6 months of extensions already. Said his hands are tied. Lena took a sip of coffee. It tasted like burnt earth, but she welcomed it. Can't really blame him. We owe money we don't have. Still feels wrong. Your father built half this town with his bare hands back in the day. Doesn't matter what you built if you can't pay your debts. They fell into silence, the kind that hung heavy with things unsaid. Lena finished her coffee, thanked Martha, and was almost to the door when the other woman spoke again. You know, I heard something yesterday. Something in Martha's tone made Lena stop. Heard what? Martha glanced toward the window, like she was checking to make sure no one was listening. Probably nothing. Probably just talk. Martha. Well, the older woman lowered her voice even further. Betty Carson was in here yesterday, and she mentioned that Caleb Mercer was in town, asked about your situation. The name hit Lena like a physical thing. Caleb Mercer asked about us? That's what Betty said. She was in the post office when he came in, and she heard him talking to the clerk about the Whitaker ranch, about the debt. Lena's mind went blank for a second, then started racing. Caleb Mercer, the most feared man in 3 counties. The ghost story mothers used to scare their children into behaving, the subject of more rumors than actual facts. Why would he... She couldn't even finish the sentence. Martha shrugged, but her eyes were sharp. No idea. But you know how he is. Keeps to himself up in that cabin, barely talks to anyone. For him to come into town asking questions? She trailed off meaningfully. That doesn't make any sense. Nothing about that man makes sense. Martha crossed her arms. But I thought you should know, in case it means something. Lena left the store feeling more confused than when she'd entered. Caleb Mercer. What possible interest could he have in their problems? She'd only spoken to the man a handful of times in her life. He kept to himself, living in a cabin about 10 miles north of town, running a small operation that somehow managed to turn a profit when everyone else was struggling. Most people crossed the street when they saw him coming. But Lena remembered something else. Something from 2 years ago that she'd never quite been able to reconcile with the man's fearsome reputation. It had been early spring, and part of their fence line had collapsed in a storm. Her father had been laid up with a broken leg, and Lena had been out trying to fix it herself. A job that required more muscle than she had. She'd been about to give up when a rider appeared over the ridge. Caleb Mercer. He dismounted without a word, spent 3 hours helping her repair the fence, and left before she could properly thank him. Hadn't asked for anything. Hadn't even really spoken beyond a few terse instructions about how to brace the posts. She'd mentioned it to her father later, and he'd gotten a strange look on his face. Said she should stay away from men like Caleb Mercer. Said there were things about him that decent people didn't talk about. She'd asked what things. He'd just shaken his head and told her to let it go. Now, standing on Main Street with the afternoon sun beating down and 3 days until they lost everything, Lena couldn't stop thinking about it. About Caleb Mercer asking questions. About a man with a dark reputation showing interest in their impossible situation. She rode home slowly, her mind churning with possibilities she couldn't quite name. That night, Lena couldn't sleep. She lay in her small bedroom staring at the ceiling and listening to the house settle around her. Her father had gone to bed early, exhausted by the weight of everything. She'd heard him pacing in his room for an hour before finally going quiet. $1,500. The number kept circling her mind like a vulture. There was no way to get it, no miracle coming. In 3 days, men from the bank would show up with papers that said the land belonged to someone else now, and that would be the end of everything. Unless. The thought formed before she could stop it, slithering into her consciousness like smoke under a door. Caleb Mercer had money. Everyone knew that, even if no one knew exactly where it came from. He ran cattle, but not enough to account for the kind of wealth people whispered about. Some said he'd robbed stagecoaches back in his outlaw days. Others claimed he'd killed men for bounty money. A few insisted he'd found gold somewhere and was sitting on a fortune. All rumors, all unconfirmed. But the man had resources, that much was certain, and he'd been asking about their situation. Lena sat up in bed, her heart starting to pound. This was insane. She was actually considering, what? Riding out to Caleb Mercer's cabin and asking him for $1,500? Just asking? Like that was something people did? The man was dangerous. Everyone said so. He'd done terrible things. He had a past darker than midnight, and people who got too close to him tended to regret it. But he'd also fixed her fence without being asked. She pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to think clearly. This was desperation talking. This was the kind of stupid decision people made when they were backed into corners with no way out. And yet, what other option did she have? Sit here and watch everything fall apart. Let her father lose the land his grandfather had claimed, that his father had built, that he'd poured his whole life into. 3 days. Before she could talk herself out of it, Lena got out of bed and pulled on her clothes. Her hand shook as she buttoned her shirt. This was crazy. This was beyond crazy. But doing nothing felt crazier. She'd just go talk to him. Ask if the rumors were true, if he'd really been asking about them. Maybe there was some reasonable explanation. Maybe she was lying to herself and she knew it, but she saddled Juniper anyway. Inan. The ride to Caleb Mercer's cabin took just over an hour in the dark. Lena knew the way. Everyone in Hollow Creek knew where the dangerous man lived, even if they claimed not to. It was the kind of knowledge that got passed around in whispers, like knowing where the snake dens were. The moon was bright enough to light her path, turning the familiar landscape into something silver and strange. Juniper's hooves clopped against hard-packed earth, the sound carrying in the still night air. Lena had plenty of time to reconsider, to turn around, to acknowledge that this was potentially the stupidest thing she'd ever done. She kept riding. The cabin appeared over a rise, set back in a small valley with a creek running through it. It was larger than she'd expected, well-maintained, with a barn and several outbuildings that looked solid and cared for. Smoke drifted from the chimney. He was awake. Lena's courage, which had been questionable at best, started to evaporate. What was she doing? She couldn't just knock on Caleb Mercer's door at midnight and... A dog barked. A big dog, from the sound of it. Lena froze as a massive shape emerged from the shadows near the barn. Some kind of cattle dog, probably, though it looked big enough to be part wolf. Easy, she whispered, though whether she was talking to the dog or herself wasn't clear. The cabin door opened. Caleb Mercer stepped out onto the porch, backlit by lamplight, and even from this distance, Lena could feel the weight of his presence. He was tall, taller than she'd remembered, with broad shoulders and the kind of stillness that came from complete confidence in his ability to handle whatever came next. "Who's there?" His voice carried across the yard, low and controlled. Lena swallowed hard. Too late to turn back now. "It's Lena Whitaker," she called out, her voice sounding smaller than she wanted. "I need to talk to you." Silence. The kind that stretched long enough to make her wonder if he was going to tell her to leave. Then, "Dismount. Slowly. Charlie doesn't like sudden movements." Charlie, apparently, was the dog. Lena climbed down from Juniper, her legs unsteady after the ride and her nerves. The dog watched her with intelligent eyes, not aggressive, but clearly alert. Caleb Mercer walked down from the porch, and as he got closer, Lena could see him more clearly in the moonlight. He was maybe 35, with dark hair and a face that looked like it had seen too much and forgotten how to be soft. A scar ran along his left jaw, pale against tanned skin, but it was his eyes that caught her. Dark, assessing, and absolutely unreadable. "Lena Whitaker," he said, and something in the way he said her name made it clear he knew exactly who she was. "It's past midnight." "I know, I'm sorry, I just—" She stopped, realizing she had no idea how to explain this. "I heard you were asking about my family's situation." His expression didn't change. "Heard from who?" "Does it matter?" "Might." They stood there, facing each other in the moonlight, and Lena felt the full weight of her decision settling onto her shoulders. This man was dangerous. This man had done things that made people cross themselves when his name came up. This man was her last desperate hope. "The bank is coming Friday," she said. "We owe $1,500. We don't have it. They're going to take the ranch." "I know." 2 words. Flat and certain. "I know." "Then why were you asking about it?" Instead of answering, Caleb turned and walked back toward the cabin. "Come inside. No point having this conversation in the yard." Every instinct Lena had screamed at her not to follow him. Nice girls didn't go into strange men's cabins at midnight. Nice girls didn't put themselves in situations they couldn't get out of. But nice girls with options weren't standing in Caleb Mercer's yard, so she tied Juniper to the porch rail and followed him inside. Okay. The cabin's interior surprised her. She'd expected something rough, maybe dirty. Instead, it was neat and well organized. A fire burned in the hearth. Books lined a shelf on one wall. Actual books, more than she'd seen outside of the schoolhouse. A table and chairs sat near the window. Everything was simple but solid, built to last. Caleb gestured to one of the chairs. "Sit." Lena sat. He moved to a cabinet and pulled out a bottle and 2 glasses. "I don't drink," she said. "You might want to." He poured amber liquid into both glasses anyway and pushed one across the table toward her. Then he sat down across from her, his large frame making the chair look small. For a long moment, he just looked at her. Studied her, really, in a way that made her want to squirm. She forced herself to stay still, to meet his gaze even though everything in her wanted to look away. "Why'd you really come here?" he asked finally. "I told you. You told me what everyone already knows. Bank's coming. You're broke. You're losing the ranch. That's not why you're sitting in my cabin at midnight." He took a sip of his drink. "So I'll ask again. Why are you here?" The directness of it caught her off guard. Most men she knew talked around things, danced through polite conversation before getting to the point. Caleb Mercer apparently didn't believe in that. "I need help," she said. The words came out harder than she intended, edged with something close to anger. At herself, at him, and at the whole impossible situation. "I need $1,500, and I don't have any way to get it. And I heard you were asking about us, and I thought, I don't know what I thought, that maybe you knew something, that maybe there was some option I hadn't considered." "There is." Her heart skipped. "There is? I'll pay your debt, all of it. The ranch stays in your family's name. Bank goes away happy." For a second, Lena couldn't breathe. It was too easy, too simple. There had to be a catch. "What do you want in return?" Caleb set down his glass carefully. "You." The word hung in the air between them like a physical thing. "What?" "Marry me. Become my wife. I pay the debt, the ranch is saved, and you come live here." Lena stared at him, certain she'd misheard. "You want me to marry you?" "That's what I said." "Why?" The question came out sharp, almost accusatory. "Why would you want that?" "My reasons are my own." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one you're getting." His voice stayed level, but there was steel underneath it. "I'm making you an offer, Lena Whitaker. A clean business arrangement. You need money. I have money. You need your family's land saved. I can save it. In exchange, you marry me." This was insane. This was beyond insane. Lena stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. "You're asking me to sell myself." "I'm asking you to make a choice." Caleb didn't move, didn't raise his voice. A hard choice, but a choice nonetheless. You walk out that door right now, you go home, and in 3 days, everything's gone. Your father loses the land. You both end up with nothing. He paused. "Or you agree to my terms and the ranch survives. Your father keeps what's his. You have security, protection, and a roof over your head for the rest of your life. As your wife. As my wife." "And what exactly does that entail?" She couldn't keep the bitterness out of her voice. What rights do you think marriage gives you? Something flickered across his face, the first real emotion she'd seen. I'm not asking for your love, Lena. I'm not even asking for your affection. This is a transaction. You need something. I need something. We both get what we want. You haven't told me what you want. A wife. Someone to share this place with. Someone who... He stopped, and for the first time he looked almost uncertain. Someone who isn't afraid of me. The last words came out quieter than the rest, and they hit Lena harder than anything else he'd said, because she realized, standing there in his cabin with her whole world crumbling around her, that she wasn't afraid of him. She should be. Everyone else was. But she wasn't. I need to think about this. You have until Friday. Day after tomorrow, I ride into town and pay your debt. You have until then to decide if you're coming back with me or not. And if I say no, then I pay the debt anyway. Consider it a gift. You and your father keep the ranch free and clear. Lena's head spun. Why would you do that? Because some debts should be paid regardless of what you get in return. He stood up, moving toward the door. Go home. Think about it. But know this. If you say yes, I keep my word. You'll want for nothing. Your family will be protected. And I'll never raise a hand to you in anger. That's my promise. The town says you're an outlaw, a killer. The town says a lot of things. He opened the door. Most of them are even true. She wanted to ask what he meant by that. Wanted to demand answers about his past, about the rumors, about why everyone feared him. But his expression had closed off again, gone back to that unreadable mask. Lena walked to the door, then stopped. The fence. 2 years ago. Why did you help me? For a long moment, she didn't think he'd answer. Then, because no one else would. The ride home felt longer than the ride there. Lena's mind wouldn't stop racing, circling the same impossible choice over and over again. Marry Caleb Mercer. Become the wife of the most feared man in Texas. Tie her entire future to someone everyone said was dangerous, violent, and wrong. Or watch her father lose everything. The ranch came into view just as dawn started to break. The house looked small and tired in the early light, worn down by years of hardship. But it was home. It was everything. Lena unsaddled Juniper, fed her, and walked toward the house on legs that felt like they'd been running for hours. She was exhausted, bone-deep tired in a way that had nothing to do with the physical ride. Her father was already up, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, staring at nothing. "Where were you?" he asked without looking up. Lena sat down across from him. For a long moment, she didn't speak. Couldn't speak. The words felt too big, too impossible. "Pa," she said finally, "what if there was a way to save the ranch?" Now he looked at her, really looked, with eyes that had lost their hope days ago. "There isn't. But what if there was? What would you be willing to do? Lena, don't torture us both with... I'm serious." She reached across the table, grabbing his hand. "What if someone offered to pay the debt? All of it? And the ranch stays ours?" His expression shifted from tired to suspicious. "Who?" She took a breath. "Caleb Mercer." The reaction was immediate. Her father jerked his hand back like she'd burned him. "No, absolutely not. Pa, I don't know what that man offered you, but the answer is no. I won't have you anywhere near him. He offered to pay our debt." "Nothing comes free from men like that?" Her father stood up, his chair scraping violently against the floor. "Jesus, Lena, what were you thinking? Going to see him at night?" "I was thinking we're losing everything. We'll find another way. There is no other way." Now she was standing too, her voice rising to match his. "You've tried everything. We both know it. Friday comes and we're done. Unless what? Unless you sell yourself to a man everyone knows is dangerous? A man who's killed people? Who's robbed and stolen and done things we can't even talk about in polite company. He helped me fix the fence once." The non sequitur stopped her father cold. "What?" 2 years ago, when you broke your leg. Part of the fence collapsed and I was trying to fix it myself. Caleb Mercer rode by, and he stopped. Spent 3 hours helping me repair it. Didn't ask for anything. Didn't even say much. Just helped and left. Her father's expression shifted. "That doesn't mean..." "It means He's not just the monster everyone says he is. Lena's voice went quiet. Maybe he did bad things. Maybe all the rumors are true, but he's offering us a chance, and I don't know if we can afford to turn it down. What exactly did he offer? This was the moment, the point where she had to say it out loud and make it real. He'll pay the debt if I marry him. The silence that followed was absolute. Her father stared at her like she'd started speaking a foreign language. Marry him, he repeated slowly. It's a business arrangement. He was very clear about that. It's not about... She couldn't quite finish the sentence. Lena, her father's voice had gone very soft, very dangerous. You are not marrying that man. I don't care if we lose everything. I don't care if we end up with nothing. You are not sacrificing yourself for this land. It's not your choice. Like hell it isn't. I'm your father. And I'm 22 years old. The words came out sharp enough to cut. I'm old enough to make my own decisions. And I'm telling you there's a way to save this ranch. And I'm considering it. By tying yourself to a man you barely know, a man with a past so dark people won't even talk about it? People talk about it plenty. They just don't know if any of it's true. Her father sat down heavily, looking older than she'd ever seen him. If you actually do this, Lena, I'll never forgive myself. Then don't. Forgive me instead. She sat down next to him, taking his hand again. Pa, I know this isn't what you want. It's not what I want either. But wanting doesn't keep roofs over heads or food on tables. Wanting doesn't save ranches from banks. There has to be another way. If you find it before Friday, I'll take it. She squeezed his hand. But if you can't, then I need you to understand why I'm doing this. And I need you to know it's my choice. They sat there in the growing morning light, father and daughter, holding on to each other like drowning people. And maybe they were. Maybe they'd been drowning for 2 years and were only now reaching for the lifeline, poisoned though it might be. Tell me one thing, her father said finally. When you look at him, when you look at Caleb Mercer, are you afraid? Lena thought about it, really thought, remembering the way he'd sat across from her in the cabin, the directness of his questions, the quietness of his promise, the way he'd said, because no one else would, like it explained everything. No, she said softly. I'm not afraid of him. Then you're braver than I am. Her father pulled his hand back and stood up. Or more foolish. I genuinely don't know which. He walked out of the kitchen, leaving Lena alone with her impossible choice and 36 hours to make it. Friday came too fast and too slow at the same time. Lena spent Thursday working around the ranch, trying to keep busy, trying not to think about what she was about to do. Her father didn't speak to her beyond necessary communication. He wasn't angry anymore, just heartbroken, which was somehow worse. That night, she laid out her best dress. It wasn't much, a simple gray thing with a white collar, but it was clean and it fit. If she was going to do this, she was going to do it properly. She didn't sleep. Morning arrived with the same indifference it always had. Lena washed, dressed, and braided her hair with hands that only shook a little. When she looked at herself in the small mirror, she saw a stranger. A woman making an impossible choice. A girl about to become a wife to a man she barely knew. Her father was waiting in the kitchen, and his expression almost broke her resolve. But he didn't try to stop her. If he hurts you, her father said quietly, if he lays one finger on you wrong, you come home. You hear me? I don't care about the debt. I don't care about the ranch. You come home. I will. Promise me. I promise, Pa. He pulled her into a hug that lasted too long and not long enough. Then he let her go, and she walked out to where Juniper was already saddled. The ride to Caleb's cabin in full daylight felt different than it had at midnight. More real, more final. Lena kept her eyes forward, her spine straight, and tried to convince herself she was doing the right thing. She arrived just before noon. The cabin looked the same as it had before, solid and well kept. This time, when Charlie came out barking, she recognized him and spoke his name. The dog's tail wagged. Caleb emerged from the barn, and even from a distance, she could see the moment he registered what she was wearing, what her presence meant. She'd come to say yes. He walked toward her slowly, and when he got close enough, she could see something in his expression that might have been relief. You're sure? He asked. I'm here, aren't I? That's not what I asked. Lena climbed down from Juniper, standing in front of him in her best dress and her resolve. I'm sure. I'll marry you. Under one condition. His eyebrow raised slightly. What condition? You tell me the truth. Not today, maybe not even this year, but someday you tell me the truth about who you were and what you did. All of it. He looked at her for a long moment. And if you don't like what you hear, then we'll deal with it then. She held out her hand. Do we have a deal? Caleb Mercer, the most feared man in Texas, the subject of countless dark rumors and whispered warnings, took her hand in his. His grip was warm and strong and surprisingly gentle. We have a deal, he said. I'll ride into town this afternoon. Talk to the bank, settle the debt. We'll marry tomorrow. Tomorrow? You want to wait longer? No, tomorrow is... She took a breath. Tomorrow is fine. He released her hand. Come inside. We should probably talk about practical matters. Practical matters? Like she was moving in with a business partner, not marrying a man everyone said was dangerous. But that's what this was, wasn't it? A business arrangement. A transaction. She followed him into the cabin, and as she crossed the threshold, Lena Whitaker felt like she was stepping into a different life entirely. She had no idea how right she was. The practical matters turned out to be surprisingly mundane. Caleb showed her around the cabin with the same matter-of-fact tone he might use to discuss cattle prices. The main room served as kitchen and living space. A bedroom in the back, his bedroom, though he didn't specify where she'd be sleeping and she didn't ask. A root cellar. A well-stocked pantry that surprised her. You cook? She asked, examining shelves lined with preserved vegetables and dried meat. I eat. Cooking's part of that. He pulled down a jar of something that might have been peaches. You cook? Well enough? Good. I can teach you what I know if you want, or you can do things your own way. Doesn't matter to me. Everything was doesn't matter with him. The casual indifference should have bothered her more than it did. They were back in the main room when Caleb stopped by a trunk near the fireplace. He opened it and pulled out a small leather pouch, the kind that clinked with the unmistakable sound of coins. 1,500, he said, setting it on the table. I'll take it to the bank this afternoon. Get a receipt with your father's name clear on it. Debt paid in full. Lena stared at the pouch. Her family's salvation bought and paid for. The weight of what she'd agreed to hit her all over again. Where did you get this kind of money? Caleb's expression didn't change. I told you. My reasons are my own. That's not going to work anymore. I'm about to become your wife. I have a right to know if this money is stolen. It's not stolen. Then where... Lena. He cut her off, but his voice stayed level. You asked for one condition. Truth someday. Not today. I'm keeping my end of the bargain. Money's clean as it can be in this territory. That's all you need to know right now. She wanted to push, wanted to demand answers, but she'd made the deal, and he was right. She'd agreed to someday, not immediately. Fine, she said, though nothing about this felt fine. What time are we going into town? I'm going alone. Like hell you are. That's my father's debt. I'm coming. Something that might have been amusement flickered across Caleb's face. Stubborn. You're just now figuring that out? No, I knew that 2 years ago when you spent 3 hours trying to fix a fence, you had no business attempting alone. He picked up the pouch. Fine, we'll go together. But I do the talking at the bank. I can talk? I know you can, but Thornton's a particular kind of bastard, and I know how to handle particular kinds of bastards better than you do. The way he said it made Lena wonder exactly what kind of bastard Caleb himself had been. Was, maybe. Present tense. They rode into Hollow Creek an hour later, and Lena felt every eye in town turn toward them. 2 riders moving down Main Street together, Lena Whitaker and Caleb Mercer, the desperate rancher's daughter and the devil himself. The whispers started before they even dismounted. Martha Davies stood outside the general store, her mouth literally hanging open. Mrs. Henderson clutched her broom like a weapon. Even the kids stopped playing to stare. Caleb ignored all of it with the ease of long practice. He tied his horse outside the bank, then turned to help Lena down. She didn't need help, but something in his expression said to let him do it anyway. Some performance for the watching crowd. His hand was steady as she took it, and he didn't let go until her feet were solid on the ground. Ready? He asked quietly. No. Yes. The bank was a small building that smelled like paper and old leather. Robert Thornton sat behind his desk, a thin man with thinning hair and the particular look of someone who enjoyed having power over other people's misery. He looked up when they entered, and his expression went from bored to shocked to something calculating in the span of 3 seconds. "Miss Whitaker," he said, standing up. "I wasn't expecting—" His eyes shifted to Caleb, and whatever he'd been about to say died in his throat. "Mr. Mercer." "Thornton." Caleb's voice carried no warmth. "We're here about the Whitaker debt." "Yes, well, I'm afraid the deadline is today, and unless Miss Whitaker has—" Caleb set the leather pouch on Thornton's desk with a solid thunk. $1,500. Count it. Thornton stared at the pouch like it might bite him. Where did you— Does it matter where the money came from? It's here. Count it, clear the debt, and give us a receipt with Samuel Whitaker's name showing 0 balance. For a moment, Lena thought Thornton might actually refuse. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for the pouch, and when he opened it, his eyes went wide. He counted, slowly, carefully, making small notations on a piece of paper. The silence stretched long enough to make Lena's palms sweat. Finally, Thornton looked up. "It's all here." "Then clear the debt." "Mr. Mercer, I have to ask, this is highly irregular. The arrangement was with Mr. Whitaker directly, and now I'm paying his debt. That's how debts work. Someone owes money, someone pays money, debt disappears." Caleb's tone never changed, but something in his posture shifted, got harder. "Or is there some problem with my money?" Thornton actually flinched. No problem. I'll draw up the papers right now." It took another 20 minutes of scratching pens and official stamps, but finally, Thornton handed over a document declaring the Whitaker Ranch debt-free and clear. Lena took it with shaking hands. It was real. Actually real. Her father got to keep the land. "Thank you," she managed. Thornton didn't look at her. His eyes were fixed on Caleb with an expression somewhere between fear and confusion. "Will there be anything else?" "Actually, yes." Caleb's voice went quiet in a way that made Lena's spine straighten. "I want you to understand something very clearly. The Whitaker Ranch is under my protection now. Anyone who tries to take advantage of them, anyone who comes sniffing around looking to claim what's theirs, anyone who so much as thinks about causing them trouble, they answer to me. Are we clear?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "We're clear," Thornton said weakly. "Good." They left the bank with everyone in town still watching. Caleb walked beside Lena, not touching her, but close enough that the statement was obvious. "She's with me now. She's mine." The possessiveness of it should have rankled. Instead, Lena felt something closer to relief. For the first time in 2 years, someone else was carrying part of the weight. "I need to take this to my father," she said, holding up the receipt. "I'll come with you." "You don't have to—" "Lena." He stopped, turning to face her on the street with half the town watching. "Tomorrow, you're going to be my wife. That means your father's going to be family, whether he likes it or not. I'd prefer to start things off right." "You think showing up at his door is starting things off right?" "I think showing him that his daughter made a choice, and I'm honoring my end of the deal, is starting things off honest." Caleb's expression was unreadable as always. "He doesn't have to like me, but he should know I keep my word." They rode out to the Whitaker Ranch in silence. Lena's mind raced with everything that had just happened, everything that was about to happen. Tomorrow she'd be married. Tomorrow she'd move into that cabin permanently. Tomorrow, her entire life would change. Her father was on the porch when they arrived, and the look on his face when he saw Caleb made Lena's chest hurt. "Pa," she said, dismounting quickly, "the debt's paid. The ranch is yours free and clear." She held out the receipt. Her father took it with trembling hands, reading it once, twice, 3 times like he couldn't quite believe the words. "Paid in full," he whispered. "Yes." Samuel Whitaker looked up at Caleb, who'd remained mounted, keeping his distance. For a long moment, the 2 men just stared at each other. "Thank you," Samuel finally said, and the words sounded like they were dragged out of him. Caleb nodded once. "I keep my promises, Mr. Whitaker. All of them." The implication was clear. "I promise to pay your debt. I promise to take care of your daughter. I keep my promises." She comes home if she wants to come home, Samuel said, and there was steel in his voice now. You understand me? Anytime, any reason, she's welcome here. Understood. Another long silence. Then Samuel turned to Lena. You're sure about this? Lena thought about lying, about saying she was completely certain and confident, but her father deserved better than that. I'm sure I'm doing what needs to be done, she said. The rest, I guess we'll find out. Her father pulled her into another crushing hug. Be smart, he whispered against her hair. Be careful. And remember what I said. You come home if you need to. I will. When they pulled apart, her father's eyes were wet. He cleared his throat roughly and turned back to Caleb. Tomorrow, then? Tomorrow, Caleb confirmed. Noon at the church, if that suits you. It suits me. Samuel's jaw tightened. You hurt her. I won't. You better not. Caleb turned his horse, and Lena followed suit. As they rode away, she looked back once to see her father standing on the porch, watching them go with an expression that broke her heart. The ride back to Caleb's cabin felt different, more final. This was happening, really happening. You should bring whatever you want from your father's place tomorrow, Caleb said as they rode. Clothes, personal things, anything that matters to you. I don't have much. Bring what you have. They reached the cabin as the sun started its descent. Caleb dismounted and gestured toward the door. You should stay tonight. Get used to the place. Lena's heart jumped. I don't think... There's a spare room in the barn. Fixed it up last week. Clean bed, privacy, everything you need. He met her eyes. I'm not asking you to share my bed before we're married, Lena. I'm asking you to get comfortable here. Big difference. She felt her cheeks heat. Oh, yeah. Oh. Was that amusement in his voice? Come on, I'll show you. The room in the barn was small but surprisingly comfortable. Clean walls, a real bed with actual quilts, a small table with a pitcher and basin, a lantern hung from a hook. This is nice, Lena said, meaning it. Built it for when I hire seasonal help. Never actually used it. Caleb set her bag down. You need anything, main house is right there. But you've got privacy if you want it. Thank you. He nodded and turned to leave, then stopped. Lena. Yeah? Tomorrow's going to be hard. People will talk. They'll say things. Some of it will be ugly. His back was to her, but she could hear the tension in his voice. I need you to know that I'm aware of what I'm asking you to take on. The reputation, the rumors, all of it. And I'm sorry for that. It was the first time he'd sounded anything close to uncertain. I knew what I was agreeing to, she said quietly. Knowing it and living it are different things. Then I guess we'll both find out together. He glanced back at her, and something in his expression shifted. Softened, maybe, though it was hard to tell in the fading light. Get some rest, he said. Tomorrow's a big day. Then he was gone, and Lena was alone in the small barn room with her choices and her fears, and the slow realization that she'd just agreed to marry a man who apologized for his reputation but wouldn't explain it. She didn't sleep well. Morning came anyway. Lena dressed in her best clothes, the same gray dress from yesterday, but with her mother's necklace around her neck. The only nice thing she owned. She braided her hair carefully, pinned it up, and tried to look like a woman who knew what she was doing. Caleb was waiting by the house, dressed in what must have been his formal clothes. Dark pants, a white shirt that looked new, a vest that actually fit properly. He'd shaved, and without the stubble, Lena could see his face more clearly. Younger than she'd thought. The scar more prominent. He looked uncomfortable in the nice clothes. Ready? He asked. As I'll ever be. They rode to the church side by side. Hollow Creek had one church, one preacher, and about 50 people who showed up every Sunday without fail. Today looked like twice that many had crammed inside. Everyone wanted to see the disaster. Preacher Morris waited at the front, a thin man with kind eyes who'd baptized Lena when she was 6. He looked conflicted now, like he wasn't sure if he should be conducting this ceremony or trying to talk her out of it. Her father sat in the front row, alone. He stood when she entered, and the pride and heartbreak in his expression nearly undid her. Lena walked down the aisle with every eye burning into her back. The whispers were loud enough to hear. Can't believe she's actually going through with it. Poor thing, desperate times. He's going to kill her within a year, mark my words. Marrying the devil to save the ranch? What a waste. Caleb stood at the front, his expression completely neutral. If he heard the whispers, he didn't show it. When Lena reached him, he offered his hand. She took it. Preacher Morris cleared his throat. We are gathered here today to witness the union of Caleb Mercer and Lena Whitaker in holy matrimony. The words felt surreal. Lena's hand shook in Caleb's, but his grip stayed steady, solid. The ceremony was short, simple. No frills, no unnecessary poetry. When it came time for vows, Caleb spoke clearly. I, Caleb Mercer, take you, Lena Whitaker, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to protect you, provide for you, and honor the commitment we've made, for as long as we both live. No love, no cherish, just the bare facts of what he was promising. Then it was Lena's turn. I, Lena Whitaker, take you, Caleb Mercer, to be my lawfully wedded husband. Her voice came out stronger than she expected. I promise to stand beside you, to honor this commitment, and to face whatever comes together, for as long as we both live. Do you have rings? Preacher Morris asked. Caleb reached into his pocket and pulled out 2 simple gold bands. Where he'd gotten them, Lena had no idea. He slipped one onto her finger, it fit perfectly, and handed her the other. Her hand shook as she put the ring on his finger, but she managed it. By the power vested in me, Preacher Morris said, and he sounded resigned. I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. Caleb looked at Lena, really looked, like he was asking permission. She nodded slightly. The kiss was brief, chaste, more of a formality than anything else. But when he pulled back, something had shifted. They were married. Actually, married. The church erupted in uncomfortable applause. People weren't celebrating so much as acknowledging that they'd witnessed something they couldn't quite believe. As they walked back down the aisle together, Lena caught sight of Sheriff Wade Callahan standing in the back. A big man with a weathered face and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He was watching Caleb with an expression Lena couldn't quite read. Outside, a handful of people offered stiff congratulations. Martha Davies hugged Lena and whispered, "You be careful, honey." Her father stood apart, and when Lena went to him, he held her tight. "It's not too late," he said quietly. "We can still—" "Pa, I made my choice." "I know. He pulled back, looking at her with wet eyes. "I love you. You know that, right?" "I know." He turned to Caleb, who'd kept a respectful distance. "Take care of her." "I will. I mean it, Mercer. You take care of her, or I don't care what kind of reputation you have. I'll come for you myself." Caleb's expression didn't change, but he nodded once. Understood. They rode away from the church as the sun reached its peak. Husband and wife. Lena Mercer now, though the name felt foreign in her mind. The cabin looked different when they arrived, not because anything had changed physically, but because this was home now. Her home. For better or worse. Caleb dismounted and helped her down. His hands lingered on her waist for just a second longer than necessary. "You should move your things into the main house," he said. "Proper rooms ready for you." "Separate from yours?" "Unless you want otherwise." He met her eyes. "I told you this is your choice. I meant it." Lena thought about it. About propriety and expectations and what marriage was supposed to mean. About the fact that she barely knew this man, reputation or not. "Separate," she said. "For now." "For now," he agreed. He showed her to a room she hadn't seen before, larger than the barn room, with a window overlooking the creek and actual furniture that looked handmade. A bed with a quilt that might have been his mother's, a chest of drawers, a small chair. "This is yours," he said. "Do whatever you want with it." "Thank you." He left her alone to settle in, and Lena sat on the bed staring at the ring on her finger. Mrs. Caleb Mercer. Wife to a man everyone feared. What had she done? A knock on the door frame made her look up. Caleb stood there, changed out of his formal clothes into his regular work shirt and pants. "Hungry?" he asked. "Starving." They ate a simple meal together at the kitchen table. Bread, cheese, some kind of stew Caleb had made that was surprisingly good. They didn't talk much, but the silence wasn't entirely uncomfortable. After, Caleb stood and started clearing dishes. "I can do that," Lena said. "We can both do it." So they washed dishes together, This strange married couple who'd known each other for less than a week. It felt weirdly domestic. Normal, even. When they finished, Caleb dried his hands and turned to her. I need to check the cattle this afternoon. You can come if you want, or stay here. Up to you. I'll come. Something like approval crossed his face. Get changed into work clothes. We'll be riding rough terrain. Lena changed into her riding clothes and met him outside. He'd saddled 2 horses, his big gelding and a smaller mare that looked well-trained. This is Willow, he said, gesturing to the mare. She's yours now if you want her. Gentle, but she's got spirit when she needs it. Mine? You're going to need a good horse. Juniper's fine for light work, but Willow can handle longer rides. He mounted his own horse. Come on, daylight's burning. They rode out across his property, and Lena was surprised by the size of it. More land than she'd realized, with cattle scattered across good grazing areas. The operation was well managed, organized in a way that spoke of someone who knew what they were doing. How long have you had this place? She asked. 5 years. Bought it with... He paused. Money I'd saved. Saved from what? Various things. She wanted to push, but remembered their deal. Truth someday, not today. They spent the afternoon checking cattle, fixing a section of fence that had come loose, making sure the water sources were clear. It was good, honest work, and Caleb moved through it with the easy competence of someone who'd been doing it his whole life. At one point, Lena noticed him favoring his left side slightly. You're hurt, she said. Old injury. Acts up sometimes. From what? He glanced at her. A bullet I didn't dodge fast enough. The casual way he said it made her stomach drop. Someone shot you? Several people have shot me over the years. That particular one was in Kansas, maybe 6 years back. He touched his left ribs absently. Healed wrong. Reminds me when the weather changes. What were you doing in Kansas? Things I'm not particularly proud of. They rode in silence after that, and Lena tried not to think about the fact that her husband had been shot multiple times and spoke about it like discussing the weather. As the sun started to set, they headed back to the cabin. Caleb showed her how he liked things organized in the barn, where the tools were kept, how he rationed feed. He explained everything with patience, never condescending, just clear and direct. You're a good teacher, she said. I'm practical. There's a difference. He hung up the saddles. You did well today. Better than I expected. I've been working ranches my whole life. I know, but there's a difference between working your family's land and working someone else's. He paused. This is yours now, too. Everything here. You're not a guest, Lena. This is your home. The words settled into her chest with unexpected weight. That night, they ate dinner together again. Caleb was quiet, but not distant. Just contained. Like he was used to keeping himself locked down. After dinner, Lena retreated to her room. She changed into her nightgown, washed her face, and sat on the bed, trying to process everything that had happened. She was married to Caleb Mercer, the most feared man in Texas. And so far, he'd been nothing but respectful, patient, and surprisingly thoughtful. A soft knock on her door made her jump. Yes? Just checking if you need anything, Caleb's voice came through the wood. Water, extra blankets, anything. I'm fine. Thank you. All right, sleep well. She heard his footsteps retreat, and a moment later, the sound of his own door closing. Lena lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. This was her life now, this strange, unexpected life with a man she barely knew but had promised to stand beside. The question was whether she'd made the right choice or the biggest mistake of her life. She had a feeling she'd find out soon enough. 3 days into the marriage, Sheriff Callahan showed up. Lena was in the garden. Caleb had a small vegetable plot she'd taken over when she heard the horse approaching. She looked up to see the sheriff dismounting, his expression serious. Caleb emerged from the barn, wiping his hands on a rag. The moment he saw Callahan, his entire demeanor changed. Not afraid exactly, but wary. Wade, he said. Caleb. The sheriff's eyes flicked to Lena, then back. Congratulations on the marriage. Heard it was quite the event. Hollow Creek doesn't have much else to talk about. True enough. Callahan shifted his weight. Can we talk? Private? Anything you need to say, you can say in front of my wife. The word wife still sounded strange to Lena's ears, but she appreciated that he'd said it. Callahan looked uncomfortable. All right. I got word that Silas Crow's been spotted 2 counties over, asking questions about you. The air seemed to freeze. Silas Crow, Caleb repeated, and something dangerous entered his voice. Who's Silas Crow? Lena asked. Neither man answered her immediately. They were staring at each other with the kind of intensity that made her nervous. How reliable is the information? Caleb asked. Reliable enough that I rode out here to warn you. Callahan's expression was grim. Caleb, if he's coming, he won't. You don't know that. I know Silas. He's careful. Too careful to come after me directly. Unless he's changed, Callahan glanced at Lena again. Or unless he's got a reason now that he didn't have before. The implication was clear. Lena was the reason. The vulnerability. Someone want to explain what's going on? She asked, keeping her voice level even though her heart was pounding. Caleb's jaw tightened. Silas Crow is someone from my past, someone I hoped was dead, or at least smart enough to stay away. And he's not? Apparently not. Callahan stepped forward. Lena, I don't know how much Caleb's told you about where he came from. Nothing, she said flatly. He's told me nothing. Then you should know that there are men out there who have reasons to hold grudges. Old grudges from before Caleb settled here, and Silas Crow is one of the worst of them. Worst how? The kind who doesn't forget and doesn't forgive. Callahan's expression was serious. The kind who might see your new wife as leverage. Lena felt cold. You're saying I'm in danger. I'm saying you might be. Callahan looked at Caleb. You need to tell her, all of it. She deserves to know what she's gotten into. I know what I'm doing, Caleb said, but there was an edge to his voice now. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, you just painted a target on a woman who's done nothing wrong except try to save her father's ranch. The 2 men stared at each other, and Lena could feel the tension crackling between them. I'll handle Silas, Caleb said finally. How? The way I handled things before. That was different. You didn't have... Callahan gestured toward Lena. You didn't have people to protect. Which is exactly why I'll handle it. Callahan looked like he wanted to argue, but instead he turned to Lena. If anything happens, anything at all that feels wrong, you come find me. Understand? I understand. The sheriff mounted his horse, gave Caleb one last long look, and rode away. Lena stood in the garden, dirt on her hands and fear in her chest, and stared at the man she'd married. You want to tell me what that was about? Caleb's expression had gone completely closed off. Old business. Old business that might get me killed? No one's getting killed. You don't know that. Her voice rose despite herself. The sheriff just said there's a man out there who might come after me because of you, and you're standing there telling me it's old business? Lena, no. You promised me the truth eventually. I think eventually just became now. They stood facing each other across the garden, and for the first time since she'd agreed to this marriage, Lena felt real fear. Not of Caleb, but of what he'd brought into her life without warning. Inside, he said finally. If we're doing this, we're doing it private. They sat at the kitchen table and Caleb poured himself a drink. His hands were steady, but Lena could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw worked like he was chewing on words he didn't want to say. You want the truth? He said finally. Fine. Here it is. 10 years ago, I rode with a gang, 5 men total. We hit stagecoaches, trains, whatever looked like it had money worth taking. We weren't the worst out there, but we weren't good either. Lena's stomach twisted, but she kept her voice level. Go on. Silas Crow was one of them. Smart, ruthless, didn't care who got hurt as long as the job got done. Caleb took a drink. We pulled maybe a dozen jobs over 2 years, made decent money, kept our heads down between work. It was a living, if you could call it that. What changed? Kansas. We hit a payroll office in a town called Redemption. Should have been simple. Get in, take the money, get out. But there was a clerk there, young kid, maybe 19. He pulled a gun. Caleb's voice had gone flat, emotionless, but Lena could see the muscle ticking in his jaw. Silas shot him, didn't hesitate. Kid died right there on the floor, and Silas just stepped over him and kept loading money into bags like nothing happened. And you? I froze. Stood there looking at this kid bleeding out, and I realized what we were. What I was. He set down his glass. We got the money, got out clean, but I couldn't stop seeing that kid's face. The silence stretched between them. Outside, Charlie barked at something, the sound distant and hollow. 2 weeks later, I went to the marshal's office, told them everything. Where the gang was holed up, what jobs we'd pulled, who was involved. They raided the camp 3 days after that. You turned them in, Lena said. I turned them in. Got 2 of them killed in the raid. Another one hanged 6 months later. Silas got away. Caleb looked at her directly now. That's who I am, Lena. I'm the man who robbed and stole and let innocent people die until I couldn't stomach it anymore. And then I'm the man who betrayed the only people who trusted me to save my own conscience. You did the right thing. Did I? Because I'm not sure there is a right thing when you've done that much wrong. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. I took the reward money they gave me for the information, used it to buy this land, start over, built something clean out of blood money. You tell me if that's right. Lena's mind was racing. This was what the town had whispered about. This was the darkness everyone feared. And he was right. It was bad. Worse than she'd imagined in some ways, but not in others. Why did you help me fix the fence that day? She asked. The question clearly caught him off guard. What? 2 years ago. You didn't know me. You could have ridden past, but you stopped and spent 3 hours helping a stranger. Why? Caleb looked away. I don't know. Yes, you do. Because you needed help, and no one else was going to give it. The words came out rough, almost angry. Because I've spent 10 years watching people turn away from things that needed doing, and I got tired of it. Because maybe if I did enough small, decent things, it would balance out the big, terrible ones. Take your pick. Silas wants revenge, Lena said, for you turning the gang in. Silas wants me dead. Has for 10 years. But he's careful, like I said. He won't come at me straight on, unless he thinks he has leverage now. She touched the ring on her finger. Unless he thinks you care about someone. Which is why I'm going to end this before it starts. Caleb stood up, moving to the window. I'll ride out tomorrow, find him before he finds us. No. He turned. No? You're not leaving me here alone to wait and see if some outlaw shows up looking for revenge. Lena stood too, facing him across the kitchen. We're in this together now. Remember? That's what we agreed to. This is different. How? How is this different from anything else we'll face? Her voice rose. You told me your past was dark. You told me there were things you regretted. I married you anyway, Caleb. I made that choice knowing there would be consequences. You didn't know there'd be a man like Silas Crow coming after you. No, but now I do, and I'm still here. She crossed her arms. So what's the plan? You ride out and what, hunt him down? Kill him? If it comes to that. The casual way he said it made her breath catch. You've killed people before. It wasn't a question. Yes. How many? Does it matter? Maybe. Lena held his gaze. Or maybe I just need to understand who I married. Caleb was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. 6. That I know for certain. Maybe more during raids when bullets were flying and I couldn't tell who hit what. But 6 that were definitely me, no question. And Silas, how many has he killed? More than me. More than he probably remembers. Lena sat back down, suddenly exhausted. This was her life now. Married to a man with 6 confirmed kills, facing down someone worse. Tell me about him, she said. Silas. What kind of man is he? Caleb returned to the table but didn't sit. Smart. Patient. Mean as a snake and twice as hard to see coming. He doesn't get angry, doesn't make mistakes. When he wants something dead, it dies. Eventually. How did he get away when the others didn't? He wasn't at the camp when the marshals raided. He'd gone into town for supplies. By the time he got back, everyone was dead or arrested. He knew immediately someone had talked. How do you know he knew it was you? Because he sent me a letter 3 months later, found it nailed to a tree at my property line. Caleb's expression darkened. Said he'd make me watch everything I cared about burn before he killed me. But back then, I didn't care about anything, had nothing to burn. And now you do. Now I do. The weight of that settled between them like a physical presence. So we prepare, Lena said finally. We don't run, We don't hide. We prepare. Lena, I'm not arguing about this. This is my home now, too. If someone's coming for it, I'm going to help defend it. Something shifted in Caleb's expression. You know how to shoot? My father taught me when I was 12. Shooting targets and shooting people are different things. I imagine they are. But I'd rather know how to do both and not need it than need it and not know how. Caleb studied her for a long moment, then gave a sharp nod. All right. Tomorrow we'll go over the property, figure out defensive positions, make sure you know where everything is. I've got extra rifles, ammunition. We'll run you through drills. Good. But if it comes down to it, if Silas shows up and things go wrong, you run. You get on Willow and you ride straight to town to the sheriff. You don't look back. You don't try to be a hero. Understood? And leave you here alone? Yes. No deal. Lena? I said no deal, Caleb. You married me. That means we face things together, not you throwing yourself in front of danger while I run away. She leaned forward. You want me to promise I'll be smart? I'll be careful. I won't do anything stupid? Fine, I promise. But I'm not promising to abandon you. He looked at her like he was seeing someone completely different from who he'd expected. You're stubborn as hell, you know that? You're just figuring that out now? The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. Fair enough. They spent the rest of the evening going over plans. Caleb showed her where he kept weapons, rifles in the cabin, a pistol in the barn, another in the root cellar. He explained sightlines around the property, where someone could approach unseen, where the best defensive positions were. Lena absorbed all of it, committing every detail to memory. This was survival now. This was what her choice had bought her. That night she lay in bed listening to the sounds of the cabin settling. Across the hall, she could hear Caleb moving around in his room. Eventually, his door opened and she heard his footsteps moving through the house. She got up, pulled a shawl around her shoulders, and found him on the porch. He was sitting on the steps, rifle across his knees, staring out into the darkness. Can't sleep? She asked. Not tonight. Lena sat down beside him. The night was cool, clear, with stars scattered across the sky like someone had flung diamonds. Do you think he'll come? She asked. Eventually, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week, but Silas is patient. He'll wait for the right moment. And when he does, then we'll be ready. Caleb glanced at her. You should go back inside, get some rest. You should too. Can't, not until I know the perimeter's clear. They sat in silence for a while, and Lena found herself studying his profile. The hard line of his jaw, the scars she'd noticed on their wedding day, the way his hands rested on the rifle with practiced ease. Can I ask you something? She said. Might not answer, but you can ask. Do you regret it? Turning them in? Caleb was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't respond. Then, I regret that it took a kid dying for me to do the right thing. I regret the years I spent being someone I'm ashamed of. But turning them in? No, that's the one thing I don't regret. Even knowing Silas is out there. Even then. He turned to look at her. You should hate me for bringing this into your life. Probably, Lena agreed, but I don't. Why not? I'm still figuring that out. Something passed between them in that moment. Something Lena couldn't quite name. Understanding, maybe. Or the beginning of trust. Go to bed, Lena, Caleb said softly. I'll keep watch. She went inside, but sleep was a long time coming. The next week passed in a strange routine. Days were spent working the ranch, Caleb teaching Lena every detail of his operation. How he rotated grazing areas, where the best water sources were, which cattle were ready to sell, and which needed more time. But there was an undercurrent to everything now. A tension that hummed beneath the surface. Caleb was constantly alert, always watching the horizon, listening for sounds that didn't belong. He also started training Lena in earnest, not just where the guns were, but how to use them effectively. They spent hours in the back pasture, shooting at targets he'd set up. Don't jerk the trigger, he instructed. Squeeze it steady, like you're trying not to wake someone up. Lena fired. The bottle 20 yards away exploded. Better, Caleb said. But you're still flinching right before the shot, anticipating the recoil. Hard not to when I know it's coming. Then stop thinking about it. Focus on the target, not the gun. They ran through drill after drill until Lena's shoulder ached from the rifle's kick. But she got better, faster, more accurate. "You're a natural," Caleb said one afternoon, watching her hit 3 targets in quick succession. "My father used to take me hunting, said every woman should know how to feed herself if she needed to." Smart man. They were walking back to the cabin when Caleb suddenly stopped. His whole body went rigid, alert. "What?" Lena whispered. "Hoofbeats." From the north. Lena strained to hear it. There. Faint but distinct. Someone was approaching. "Inside," Caleb said quietly. "Get the rifle from above the fireplace. Stay away from windows." Her heart hammering, Lena did as he said. Caleb grabbed his own rifle and positioned himself by the front window using the frame for cover. The hoofbeats got closer. Then a familiar voice called out, "Caleb, it's Wade! Don't shoot me!" The tension drained from Caleb's shoulders. "Stay there," he called back. "I'm coming out." Lena watched through the window as Sheriff Callahan dismounted. He looked travel-worn, dust covering his clothes. "Got news," Callahan said without preamble. "And you're not going to like it." Caleb gestured toward the cabin. Inside. They all gathered in the kitchen again, and Lena was struck by how this had become the room where bad news lived. "Silas was spotted in Cedar Falls," Callahan said. "That's 2 towns over. He's asking about you, about your property, about—" he glanced at Lena, "about your wife." "When?" Caleb's voice was tight. 3 days ago. He's getting closer." "Description?" "Tall, lean, gray eyes, rides a black horse with white socks. Sound right?" "That's him." Caleb's hand curled into a fist. "Anyone with him?" "The witness said he was alone, but you know how it is. Could have men waiting nearby." "Wade, I need you to do something for me," Caleb said. "Keep an eye on Lena's father. If Silas is smart, and he is, he might go after Samuel to draw me out." Lena's blood ran cold. "My father? He's your family. That makes him leverage." Caleb looked at Callahan. "Can you do it? Discreetly?" "I'll post a deputy near the Whitaker Ranch. Unofficial patrol." Callahan nodded. "But Caleb, if Silas is this close, you need to consider bringing Lena into town. Somewhere public, somewhere safe." "No," Lena said immediately. "Mrs. Mercer—" "I said no, I'm not leaving." Callahan looked at Caleb. "Talk some sense into your wife. I've learned that's a losing proposition." There was almost pride in Caleb's voice. "She stays. We'll handle it together." "You're both insane." "Maybe, but it's our choice." After Callahan left, Lena and Caleb stood on the porch watching the sheriff ride away. "I should check on my father," Lena said. "Tomorrow, daylight, and I'm coming with you." "You think Silas is watching us?" "I think Silas is always watching. That's how he stays alive." That night, Caleb didn't even pretend to go to bed. He stayed up, moving between windows, checking doors, listening to every sound. Around 2 a.m, Lena gave up on sleep and joined him. "You're going to exhaust yourself," she said. "I'll rest when this is over." "And if it takes weeks, months?" "Then I'll rest in weeks or months." She sat down on the couch, watching him pace like a caged animal. Charlie lay at her feet, the big dog's presence somehow comforting. "Tell me about before," she said. "Before all of this, where did you grow up?" Caleb stopped pacing. "Why?" "Because I'm your wife and I barely know you, and because sitting here in silence waiting for danger is driving me crazy." He considered this, then sat down in the chair across from her. "Missouri, small farm. My parents died when I was 15. Influenza outbreak." "I'm sorry. It was a long time ago." He leaned back. "I tried to keep the farm going, but I was too young, too stupid. Lost it to debt within 2 years. That's when I started drifting, picking up work where I could find it. Eventually fell in with the wrong people." "The gang." "The gang. Seemed like easy money at the time, seemed like I didn't have anything to lose." "And now?" He looked at her, really looked, in that direct way he had. "Now I have everything to lose." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Before Lena could respond, Charlie's head shot up. A low growl rumbled in his chest. Caleb was on his feet instantly, rifle in hand. "Get to your room, now!" "Caleb, now, Lena!" She ran to her room, grabbing the pistol Caleb had insisted she keep by her bed. Her hands shook as she checked the chamber. Loaded. Outside, she heard nothing. No hoofbeats, no voices. Just the night and whatever had made Charlie growl. Minutes stretched into eternity. Then she heard Caleb's voice, sharp and commanding. "Show yourself or I start shooting." Silence. "I know you're out there, Silas. Done hiding?" Lena's heart was hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. A voice drifted through the darkness, smooth and cold. "Now, is that any way to greet an old friend?" Silas Crow. He was here. "We're not friends," Caleb called back. "We stopped being friends when you put a bullet in that kid's head." "That clerk?" Silas laughed. "You threw away everything over some nobody who pulled a gun on us? That's what bothers you?" "What bothers me is I spent 2 years watching you kill people like it meant nothing. Because it did mean nothing. They were in the way. That's all." A pause. "But you meant something. You were my partner, and you betrayed me. I turned in a gang of criminals. That's not betrayal. That's justice. Call it whatever you want. Doesn't change what you did." Another pause. "Nice place you got here. Built it with that reward money, didn't you? Blood money, seems to me. What do you want, Silas?" "What do you think I want?" The voice got harder. "I want you to feel what I felt. I want you to lose everything you care about. And then I want you dead." Lena eased open her door, moving silently through the cabin. She could see Caleb silhouetted in the window, rifle aimed into the darkness. "You'll have to come through me first," Caleb said. "Oh, I will, but not tonight. Tonight's just a reminder that I can reach you anytime I want. You, your pretty new wife, her father." Silas let the threat hang. "Sleep tight, old friend. I'll be seeing you real soon." The voice faded, and then there was nothing but silence and darkness. Caleb didn't lower his rifle for another 10 minutes. When he finally did, Lena saw that his hands were shaking. "He's gone," Caleb said quietly. "For now." Lena came to stand beside him, pistol still in her hand. "He knows about my father." "Yes." "We need to warn him. At first light, we're not riding out there in the dark. That's exactly what Silas wants." They stood together in the window watching the night, and Lena realized this was her life now. This constant vigilance, this waiting for violence. "I'm scared," she said quietly. "Good. Fear keeps you smart." Caleb glanced at her. "But don't let it make you freeze. When the time comes, you do what needs doing. Can you do that?" Lena thought about her father, about this cabin that had become home, about the man beside her who'd made terrible choices and was trying desperately to make better ones. "Yes," she said, "I can do that. Then we'll get through this." They stayed up the rest of the night, taking turns watching. When dawn finally broke, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Lena felt like she'd aged 10 years. Caleb saddled both horses, and they rode hard toward the Whitaker ranch. Lena's father was on the porch, and his face drained of color when he saw their expressions. "What happened?" he demanded. "Silas Crow showed up last night," Caleb said without preamble. "He threatened you specifically. You need to come stay with us until this is over." "Like hell I will. This is my land." "Pa, please," Lena said. "He's dangerous." "So I've heard. But I'm not running from my own home because some outlaw has a grudge against your husband." Samuel looked at Caleb. "This is your mess. You handle it." "I'm trying to, by keeping you safe." "Then kill him. Isn't that what men like you do? Kill people who get in the way?" The words hit like a slap. Caleb's expression went completely neutral, but Lena saw him flinch. "Pa, that's not fair," she said. "Fair? You want to talk about fair? My daughter's married to a man with a price on his head." "There's no price on my head," Caleb interrupted. "Not anymore." "But there's men coming to kill you. Same difference." Samuel's voice shook with anger and fear. "And now you're telling me I'm in danger too because of choices you made 10 years ago?" "Yes." Caleb didn't try to defend himself. "That's exactly what I'm telling you." "Then you fix it. You end it. Whatever you have to do, you end this before someone gets hurt." "I will." "See that you do." Samuel looked at Lena. "You should come stay here. Leave him to handle his own problems." "No." "Lena," "I said no, Pa. I made a choice. I'm sticking with it." Father and daughter stared at each other, and Lena could see the heartbreak in Samuel's eyes. But she couldn't give him what he wanted. Not now. "There's a deputy watching the property," Caleb said. "Sheriff Callahan arranged it. You see anything strange? Anyone you don't recognize, you fire 3 shots in the air. The deputy will come running. I can take care of myself. I know you can, but let us help anyway. They rode back to the cabin in silence. Lena could feel Caleb's tension radiating off him in waves. My father didn't mean, she started. Yes, he did, and he's right. Caleb's voice was flat. This is my mess, and people you care about are in danger because of it. It's our mess now. He didn't respond. Back at the cabin, they went through their defensive preparations again, checked weapons, reviewed escape routes, made sure everything was ready. And then they waited. 3 days passed with no sign of Silas. 3 days of constant tension, of jumping at shadows, of sleeping in shifts. On the 4th night, Caleb finally relaxed slightly. Maybe he's playing the long game, waiting us out. Or maybe he's planning something, Lena said. She was right. The attack came just after midnight. Lena woke to Charlie's frantic barking and the smell of smoke. She bolted out of bed, grabbing her pistol, and threw open her door. Caleb! He was already up, pulling on his boots. The barn's on fire! Someone's torching the property! They ran outside and Lena's stomach dropped. The barn wasn't just on fire. It was engulfed. Flames shot 20 feet into the air, turning night into hellish daylight. The horses! Lena screamed. I'll get them! You watch the house! Caleb was already running toward the barn. Lena stood on the porch, pistol in hand, scanning the darkness beyond the fire's light. Someone had set this fire, which meant they were still out there. A shape moved near the tree line. Lena raised her pistol. Show yourself! Silas Crow stepped into the firelight, and Lena's breath caught. He was exactly as she'd imagined, tall, lean, with eyes that looked dead even in the dancing light of the flames. Mrs. Mercer, he said pleasantly. Finally get to meet the woman who made my old friend stupid enough to care about something. Stay back. Or what? You'll shoot me? He smiled. Go ahead. Try. Lena's hands shook, but she kept the pistol trained on him. Behind her, she could hear Caleb fighting to get the horses out of the burning barn. You know what your husband did? Silas asked, still walking closer. He didn't just turn us in. He set us up, fed the marshals information that got good men killed, men with families, men who trusted him, men who killed innocent people. Everyone kills innocent people eventually. Your husband just pretended he was better than the rest of us. Silas was 10 feet away now. But he's not. He's just a coward who traded his friends for a clean conscience. I said stay back. Lena! Caleb's voice raw with panic. Shoot him. Don't hesitate. Just shoot. Silas smiled. Listen to him. He knows I won't stop. Not until he's lost everything. Not until he's dead. His hand moved toward his belt. Lena fired. The shot went wide, missing Silas by a foot. He dove sideways, drawing his own gun, and suddenly bullets were flying. Lena dropped behind the porch railing as wood splintered around her. She heard Caleb yelling, heard more gunshots, heard Charlie barking furiously. When she looked up, Silas was running toward her. She fired again. This time she didn't miss. The bullet caught Silas in the shoulder, spinning him around. He went down hard, his gun flying from his hand. Lena stood up, pistol trained on him, her whole body shaking. Behind her, Caleb came running, rifle in hand. Don't move, Caleb commanded, aiming at Silas. Don't even breathe wrong. Silas laughed, clutching his bleeding shoulder. You let your wife fight your battles now? She's not fighting my battles. She's defending her home. Hoofbeats thundered in the distance, Sheriff Callahan and 2 deputies drawn by the fire and gunshots. They dragged Silas away, still laughing, still promising revenge. Caleb and Lena stood watching the barn burn, knowing the fire was too far gone to save. The horses were safe. Caleb had gotten them out, but everything else was gone. You saved my life, Caleb said quietly. I shot a man. You defended yourself. There's a difference. Lena's hands wouldn't stop shaking. I could have killed him, but you didn't. Caleb put his arm around her shoulders, the first truly intimate gesture he'd made. You did what needed doing, nothing more. They stood together, watching their barn burn to the ground, and Lena realized something. She wasn't the same woman who'd ridden to Caleb's cabin desperate and afraid. That woman wouldn't have pulled the trigger, but this one had, and she'd do it again if she had to. The barn was still smoking when dawn broke. skeletal beams jutting into the sky like broken fingers. Lena sat on the porch steps, the pistol heavy in her lap, watching embers drift on the morning breeze. She hadn't slept, couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Silas Crow's face, felt the recoil of the gun, heard him laughing as the deputies dragged him away. Caleb was out by what remained of the barn, surveying the damage with Sheriff Callahan. They'd been talking in low voices for the past 20 minutes, occasionally gesturing toward the wreckage. Charlie pressed his nose against Lena's hand, whining softly. She scratched behind his ears, grateful for the contact with something warm and alive. "Mrs. Mercer?" She looked up to find one of the deputies standing there, hat in his hands. Young kid, couldn't be more than 25. "Yes? Sheriff wanted me to tell you that we're taking Crow into Cedar Falls. They've got a proper jail there, stone walls. He won't be getting out anytime soon." "Good." The deputy shifted his weight. "Ma'am, I just wanted to say, what you did last night, standing up to him like that took real courage." Lena laughed, but it came out hollow. "Courage. That's one word for it. What would you call it? Terror? Desperation? Take your pick." She looked down at the pistol. "I've never shot anyone before." "But you did it when it mattered. That's what counts." The deputy nodded respectfully and headed back toward his horse. Lena watched him go, wondering if what she'd done really did count for something, or if she'd just added another scar to a collection she was only beginning to understand. Caleb and Callahan were walking back from the barn now. The sheriff looked grim. Caleb looked exhausted. "Total loss," Callahan said when they reached the porch. "Barn's gone. Most of your tools, tack, winter feed stores." "I can rebuild," Caleb said quietly. "With what money? That barn wasn't cheap the first time." "I'll figure it out." Callahan glanced at Lena, then back to Caleb. "There's something else you need to know. Silas was talking while we patched up his shoulder. Bragging, really, said this wasn't the end of it." Lena felt her stomach drop. "What do you mean?" "He said he's got friends, people who'll finish what he started if he can't." Callahan pulled out a small notebook. "Named 3 men specifically, Jackson Reed, Marcus Webb, and someone called Snake. Mean anything to you?" Caleb's face went white. "They're alive? You thought they were dead?" "Reed and Webb got arrested in the raid. I thought they'd hanged." "Apparently not. Served their time, got released last year." Callahan flipped through his notes. "And this Snake character, nobody seems to know his real name, but Silas made it clear they all hold the same grudge he does." "So we're not done," Lena said. Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. "Not even close." Callahan looked at Caleb. "You need to consider taking your wife somewhere safe. Let me handle this." "Wade, we've been over this. No, you listen to me." The sheriff's voice went hard. "I stood by while you built a life here because I believed you'd changed. I believed you'd left that world behind. But now that world is burning down your barn and threatening your wife. At what point do you admit you can't protect her?" You can what? Fight off 3 vengeful outlaws single-handedly? Rebuild your barn while watching your back 24 hours a day? Keep your wife from getting killed because you made enemies a decade ago?" The words hung in the air like accusations. Caleb's jaw worked, but he didn't respond. Lena stood up. "Sheriff, I appreciate your concern, but I'm not leaving." "Mrs. Mercer, I shot a man last night. I defended my home. And I'll do it again if I have to." She met his eyes. "This is where I belong now. For better or worse." Callahan looked between them, then shook his head. "You're both stubborn fools, but I'll do what I can to help." He mounted his horse. "I'll send word if I hear anything about Reed, Webb, or Snake. In the meantime, you two watch yourselves." They watched him ride away, and then it was just the 2 of them standing in the ruins of what had been a peaceful morning just hours before. "You should have gone with him," Caleb said quietly. "Probably." "Lena, don't." She cut him off. "Don't tell me what I should or shouldn't do. Don't tell me I'd be safer somewhere else. I know all that, but I'm staying anyway." "Why?" The question came out raw, almost desperate. "Why are you staying with a man who brings nothing but trouble into your life?" Lena considered the question, really considered it. A month ago, she would have said it was about the ranch, about the debt, about survival. But something had changed in the past weeks. something she was only beginning to understand. "Because you're not just trouble," she said finally. "You're also the man who taught me to shoot, who made sure I knew every inch of this property so I could defend it, who puts himself between me and danger without hesitation." She paused. "And because I'm starting to think maybe we all deserve a second chance, even outlaws." Caleb stared at her like she'd spoken in a foreign language. "I don't deserve you. Maybe not. But you've got me anyway." She gestured toward the burned barn. "So what do we do now?" He took a long breath, squared his shoulders. "Now we clean up this mess, and we rebuild. And we prepare for whatever comes next." They spent the next 3 days sorting through the wreckage. Some things were salvageable: metal tools that had survived the heat, a few pieces of tack that had been far enough from the flames. Most of it was ash and charcoal and ruined dreams. Lena's father showed up on the second day with a wagon full of supplies. He didn't say much, just started helping clear debris without being asked. "Pa, you didn't have to," Lena started. "Yes, I did." Samuel didn't look at her, just kept working. "You're my daughter. This is your home now. That means I help." Caleb approached cautiously. "Mr. Whitaker, I appreciate—" "Don't." Samuel's voice was rough. "Don't thank me. Don't apologize. Just tell me what needs doing and I'll do it." The three of them worked side by side through the afternoon. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was something. A tentative bridge being built board by board. That evening, Samuel stayed for dinner. Lena cooked what she could manage with their limited supplies, and they ate in an uncomfortable silence that gradually eased into something almost normal. "Barn's going to take months to rebuild properly," Samuel said, pushing food around his plate. "You got the money for materials?" "I'll manage," Caleb said. "That's not what I asked." Caleb set down his fork. "No, I don't have the money, but I'll figure something out." "You could sell some cattle," Lena suggested. "The market's decent right now." "Need the cattle for breeding stock. Sell them now and we're set back years." "Then what?" Samuel asked. Caleb was quiet for a long moment. "There's work up in the mining camps. Hard work, but it pays. I could hire on for a few months, send money back, and leave Lena here alone with 3 outlaws potentially on their way?" Samuel's voice rose. "Are you insane?" "I'd make sure she was protected. She could stay in town or—" "No," Lena said flatly. Both men looked at her. "No," she repeated. "You're not leaving me behind while you work yourself to death in some mining camp. We'll find another way." "There is no other way," Caleb said, frustration creeping into his voice. "We need money to rebuild, and I don't have it. So unless you've got a better idea." "We ask for help." "From who?" "The town. The people we've helped." Lena leaned forward. "Pa, remember when the Hendersons' well went dry? Who rode out and helped them dig a new one?" Samuel's expression shifted. "Caleb did." "And when Martha Davies' husband died, who made sure she had enough firewood for the winter?" "Caleb," Samuel admitted reluctantly. "Right. So maybe it's time we stopped pretending you're the monster everyone thinks you are and started acting like part of the community you've been helping for 5 years." Lena looked at her husband. "People owe you, Caleb, more than you realize. Maybe it's time to collect." Caleb looked uncomfortable. "I didn't help people so they'd owe me." "I know that, but sometimes accepting help is just as important as giving it." Samuel was nodding slowly. "She's right. You've done plenty for folks around here. They'd help if they knew you needed it. They're afraid of me. They're afraid of your reputation, but reputations can change." Samuel pushed back from the table. "I'll talk to some people. See what I can arrange." After her father left, Lena and Caleb cleaned up the dinner dishes in silence. She could feel him watching her, could sense the questions he wanted to ask. "What?" she finally said. "You're different than you were a month ago." "I shot a man a few days ago. I'd be surprised if I wasn't different." "It's more than that." He dried a plate, set it aside carefully. "You're stronger, more certain. Maybe I finally figured out who I need to be here." Lena rinsed another dish. "Or maybe I'm just tired of being scared all the time." "You have every right to be scared. Having the right to feel something and letting it control you are 2 different things." She glanced at him. "You taught me that, whether you meant to or not." Something shifted in Caleb's expression. He reached out, almost hesitantly, and touched her hand. Just a brief contact, but it was the most deliberate affection he'd shown since their wedding. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For staying, for fighting, for not giving up on this." He gestured vaguely around the cabin. "On us." Lena turned to face him fully. They were close now, closer than they'd been since that brief wedding kiss. She could see the exhaustion in his face, the weight he carried, the fear he tried to hide. "Caleb," she said softly, "when are you going to understand that I'm not going anywhere? When I stop being afraid that I'll get you killed? That's not going to happen. You don't know that." "No, but I trust that we'll face whatever comes together." She squeezed his hand. "That's what marriage means, right? Facing things together?" He pulled her into a hug then, sudden and fierce. Lena went still for a moment, surprised, then wrapped her arms around him. He was warm and solid and trembling slightly, like he'd been holding himself together by force of will and had finally let go. "I'm sorry," he whispered against her hair, "for all of this, for everything you've had to endure because of me. Stop apologizing and start trusting that I can handle it." They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other in the quiet kitchen, and Lena felt something fundamental shift between them. This wasn't just a business arrangement anymore. Hadn't been for a while if she was honest with herself. This was becoming real. Over the next week, something unexpected happened. People started showing up. First, it was the Henderson family, father and 3 grown sons, bringing lumber they'd had sitting unused. "Heard you might need this," Mr. Henderson said gruffly. "Figure we owe you for that well." Then came Tom Bradley and his nephew, both skilled carpenters. "Got some free time," Bradley said with a shrug. "Might as well put it to use." Martha Davies arrived with food, enough to feed an army. "Can't rebuild on an empty stomach," she declared, setting up a cooking station like she'd been planning it for weeks. One by one, people from Hollow Creek trickled in. Some brought materials, others brought labor. A few just brought their presence, a silent statement that Caleb Mercer wasn't as alone as everyone thought. Lena watched it all with growing amazement. Her father had done this, she realized. Had gone around town telling stories about Caleb's quiet kindnesses, the help he'd given without asking for thanks or payment. By the 3rd day, they had a full work crew. The sound of hammers and saws filled the air. Men called out measurements, passed tools, worked together with the easy rhythm of a community coming together. Caleb looked overwhelmed. He stood apart, watching the chaos, and Lena could see him struggling with the concept that people actually wanted to help him. "You should say something," she suggested. "Like what?" "Thank you would be a start." He walked over to where the men were framing out the new barn structure. Tom Bradley looked up, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Mr. Bradley?" Caleb started, then stopped. Tried again. "Tom, I want you to know, this means more than I can say." Bradley grinned. "About time you realized you're not the lone wolf you pretend to be. Now grab a hammer and make yourself useful." Caleb actually smiled. A real smile, not the half-grimace Lena had become used to. He grabbed a hammer and joined the work, and watching him laugh at someone's joke, watching him belong, Lena felt her chest tighten with something that might have been hope. The barn took shape over 2 weeks. It wasn't as large as the old one, but it was solid, well-built, and constructed with the kind of care that came from people who genuinely wanted to help. On the final day, as they nailed the last board into place, Tom Bradley called for everyone's attention. "I think we should have a barn-raising celebration," he announced. "Proper one, with food and music." A cheer went up from the workers. Lena looked at Caleb, who looked genuinely panicked at the thought of that many people on his property. "It's tradition," she said quietly, "and it would be rude to refuse. I don't do celebrations. You do now, unless you want to offend everyone who just spent 2 weeks helping you." He muttered something under his breath that sounded like a curse, but he nodded. The celebration happened 3 days later, and it was nothing like Lena expected. Half the town showed up, bringing food and instruments and a determination to have a good time despite the circumstances. Someone had brought a fiddle. Someone else had a banjo. Music filled the air, bright and lively, and people actually danced in the space where the barn had burned. Lena found herself swept into a reel by Tom Bradley, laughing as he spun her around. When the song ended, she was breathless and smiling wider than she had in months. Caleb stood on the porch, watching everything with an expression that was equal parts bewildered and touched. Martha Davies appeared at Lena's elbow. You've been good for him, you know. Have I? You've gotten him to accept help, to let people in. That's no small thing for a man like Caleb Mercer. Martha patted her arm. And he's been good for you too. Made you stronger, braver. I don't feel particularly brave. Brave people never do. That's what makes them brave. The celebration went on into the evening. As darkness fell, someone lit torches, and the party continued under the stars. Samuel Whitaker approached Caleb, and Lena watched nervously as the two men faced each other. You've done well here, Samuel said after a long moment. Better than I expected. Thank you. I'm not saying I like what my daughter had to do to save my ranch. I'm not saying I've forgiven you for the position you put her in. Samuel's voice was firm but not unkind. But I'm saying I see what you're trying to build, and I see how you look at her. Caleb glanced toward Lena, who was being taught a dance step by Mrs. Henderson. How's that? Like she's the most important thing in your world, like you'd burn down everything to keep her safe. Samuel extended his hand. Take care of her, Mercer. Keep doing that, and we'll be fine. Caleb shook his hand, and Lena saw both men relax slightly. Not forgiveness yet, but understanding. That was something. Later, when most of the guests had gone home and only a few stragglers remained, Caleb found Lena sitting on the porch steps. Tired? He asked. Exhausted. Happy, though. It's a strange combination. He sat down beside her. I never thought. I didn't know people would come like this. You've spent 5 years helping them. Did you really think they wouldn't help you back? I helped because it needed doing, not because I wanted something in return. I know. That's why they came. Lena leaned against his shoulder, a casual intimacy that would have been unthinkable a month ago. You're not the monster they thought you were, Caleb. Maybe you never were. I was. For a long time. Maybe. But people change. You've proven that. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the last of the torches burn down. In the new barn, the horses moved in their stalls, settling for the night. Charlie dozed at their feet. Lena, Caleb said quietly, I need to tell you something. Something in his tone made her sit up. What? When Silas showed up, when he set the fire, I realized something. He turned to look at her directly. This started as a business arrangement, a transaction, but somewhere along the way it became more than that. You became more than that. Her heart was hammering. What are you saying? I'm saying this isn't just an arrangement anymore. Not for me. He took her hand. I'm saying I care about you, Lena. More than I thought I was capable of caring about anyone. Caleb, you don't have to say anything back. I just needed you to know. Needed you to understand that when I fight for you, when I protect you, it's not out of obligation. It's because... He stopped, struggling with words. It's because losing you would break something in me that I didn't even know could still break. Lena's eyes stung with unexpected tears. You're not just a transaction to me either. You haven't been for weeks. No? No. She squeezed his hand. You're my husband. And somewhere along the way you became someone I actually want as my husband. Not someone I married out of desperation, but someone I'd choose. Even knowing everything I know now. He pulled her close, and this time when he kissed her, it wasn't a formality or a performance. It was real and tentative and full of promise. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling. We're a mess, you know that? Lena said. The biggest mess I've ever seen. Your barn burned down. There are outlaws who want you dead. Half the town still thinks you're dangerous. And I married a woman who barely knew me to pay off a debt. When you put it that way, we sound like a disaster. We probably are. Caleb tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. But maybe we're the kind of disaster that works anyway. Maybe. They stayed on the porch long after the last guest had gone, talking quietly about nothing and everything. About the ranch, about plans for the future, about small hopes they'd both been afraid to voice. And when they finally went inside, Caleb walked Lena to her room like he always did. But this time he paused in the doorway. Lena? Yes? Would you? That is, if you wanted to. He stopped, looking uncomfortable. Your room is yours for as long as you want it, but if you ever wanted to share mine instead. Not yet, she said gently, but soon, I think, when we're both ready. Relief and disappointment crossed his face in equal measure. Soon, he agreed. He kissed her goodnight, another real kiss, sweet and gentle, and went to his own room. Lena lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, and allowed herself to feel something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. They'd survived Silas Crow. They'd rebuilt the barn. They'd earned the town's tentative respect. And somewhere in the middle of all that chaos and fear and uncertainty, they'd found something neither of them had been looking for: each other. There were still threats out there. Reed, Webb, and Snake were still free, still potentially planning revenge. The past wasn't finished with Caleb yet, and by extension, it wasn't finished with her. But for the first time since this whole thing started, Lena believed they could handle it. Together, they were stronger than either of them had been alone. And that was enough. For now, that was more than enough. Summer eased into fall with the kind of lazy grace that made you forget about danger waiting in the shadows. The new barn stood solid against the Texas sky, and the cattle grazed peacefully in pastures that had finally recovered from 2 years of drought. On the surface, everything looked like it was settling into place, but Lena had learned that surfaces lied. She was mending fence on the eastern boundary when she noticed the rider. Just a silhouette on the ridge, but something about the way he sat, his horse, made her stomach tighten. She straightened, shading her eyes against the afternoon sun. The rider didn't move, just watched. Lena walked back to where Willow was grazing, keeping her movements casual, even though her heart was pounding. The rifle Caleb had insisted she carry was strapped to the saddle. She mounted up and rode toward the cabin, resisting the urge to look back. Caleb was working on a section of the corral when she arrived. One look at her face and he was reaching for his own rifle. "Eastern Ridge," she said quietly. "Someone watching." He scanned the horizon, but the rider was gone. "You sure?" "I'm sure." They stood in tense silence, waiting. Charlie paced the yard, ears pricked, sensing their unease. "Could have been anyone," Caleb said finally, but he didn't sound convinced. "Drifter passing through. Or it could be Reed or Webb or this Snake person." Lena dismounted, her hand steadier than she felt. "How long are we going to live like this, waiting for the next attack?" "I don't know." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I have." Caleb's jaw tightened. "I can't undo the past, Lena. I can't make those men forget what I did. All I can do is stay ready and keep you safe." "I don't want to just survive, Caleb. I want to live. There's a difference." He looked at her then, really looked, and she saw the exhaustion in his eyes. The weight of 10 years of running, of waiting, of knowing that his past could come crashing down at any moment. "I know," he said quietly. "I want that too." That evening, Sheriff Callahan showed up again. He was developing a habit of bringing bad news. "Got word from a contact in Cedar Falls," he said, accepting the coffee Lena offered. "Silas Crow escaped 3 days ago." The cup Lena was holding slipped from her fingers. It shattered on the floor, coffee spreading across the boards like blood. "How?" Caleb's voice was deadly calm. "Had help. Someone broke him out during a prisoner transfer." Callahan looked grim. "And before you ask?" "Yes. We think it was Reed and Webb. Descriptions match. So all 3 of them are out there now." Lena bent to pick up the broken pieces, her hands shaking. "And this Snake person?" "No confirmed sightings. But if the others are together, he's probably with them." Callahan set down his coffee. "Caleb, this has gone past local jurisdiction. These men are wanted for multiple crimes across 3 states. I've sent word to the federal marshals. Marshals won't get here in time if they decide to move. Which is why I'm suggesting you and Lena leave right now, tonight. There's a safe house in—" "No." Both Caleb and Lena spoke at once. Callahan looked between them. "You're both out of your minds." "Maybe," Lena said, sweeping the broken pottery into a pile. "But we're not running. This is our home. Home won't mean much if you're dead. We'll take our chances." After Callahan left, muttering about stubborn fools who deserved what they got, Lena and Caleb did another weapons check. Rifles cleaned and loaded, pistols within easy reach, ammunition counted and recounted. "You think they'll come tonight?" Lena asked. "No, they'll watch first. Wait for the right moment." Caleb sat at the table, methodically cleaning his revolver. "That's how Silas works. He's patient." "So we wait." "We wait." Lena moved to the window, staring out at the darkening landscape. Somewhere out there, 4 men who wanted her husband dead were planning their next move. 4 men who saw her as nothing more than collateral damage. "Caleb," she said without turning around, "if something happens to me, don't. If something happens," she continued, "I need you to know that I don't regret this. Any of it. Even knowing how it might end." She heard his chair scrape back, heard his footsteps crossing to her. His hand settled on her shoulders, warm and solid. "Nothing's going to happen to you," he said. "You can't promise that. Watch me." He turned her to face him. "I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, Lena. Hurt a lot of people. But I'll be damned if I let them hurt you because of my choices. Whatever comes, we face it together. And we win." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I have something they don't." He touched her face gently. "Something worth fighting for." She kissed him then, fierce and desperate, and he pulled her close like she was the only solid thing in a world that kept shifting beneath his feet. They moved into Caleb's room that night, not out of passion or romance, but out of practical necessity. Better to be together if something happened. Easier to defend a single position than 2 separate rooms. Lena lay in the darkness, listening to Caleb's breathing beside her, and tried to memorize this moment. The warmth of him, the sound of his heartbeat, the weight of his arm across her waist. If this was all they got, she wanted to remember it clearly. "Can't sleep," he murmured. "Too wired." "Me too." He shifted, pulling her closer. "Tell me something." "Like what?" "Anything. Something that has nothing to do with outlaws or danger or any of this." Lena thought for a moment. "When I was 7, I convinced my father to let me raise chickens. Spent weeks building a coop, preparing everything perfectly. Got 6 hens from Martha Davies." "What happened?" "A fox got them all in the first week." She smiled in the darkness. "I cried for 3 days, refused to eat. My father finally sat me down and said that sometimes life takes things from you, and you can either give up or you can build a better coop and try again." "Did you?" "Built a coop so secure even a bear couldn't get in. Had chickens until I was 16. She paused. "I've been thinking about that a lot lately, about building better coops, about trying again even when things go wrong." "This isn't a chicken coop, Lena." "No, but the principle's the same, isn't it? Life took things from both of us. Took your family, your innocence, your clean slate. Took my mother, my security, my simple future. But we're both still here, still trying to build something better." Caleb was quiet for a long time. "You're too good for me." "Probably, but you're stuck with me anyway." He laughed softly, and the sound of it in the darkness made her chest ache with something that felt dangerously close to love. They did eventually sleep, wrapped around each other like they were afraid to let go. And when morning came, they woke to silence. Too much silence. Caleb was out of bed instantly, rifle in hand. Lena grabbed her pistol and followed him to the window. The yard looked normal, peaceful. But Charlie wasn't barking, wasn't even visible. "Where's the dog?" Lena whispered. Caleb's face went hard. "Stay inside. Lock the door behind me." "Like hell, I'm—" "Lena." He turned to face her. "Please. Just this once, let me check it out first. If something's wrong, I'll call for you. If I don't come back in 5 minutes, you ride for town and you don't look back." She wanted to argue, wanted to stand beside him like she had every other time, but something in his expression stopped her. 5 minutes, she agreed. He kissed her hard, then slipped out the door. Lena watched from the window, counting seconds in her head. 1 minute, 2. Caleb moved through the yard like a ghost, checking the barn, the corral, the outbuildings. 3 minutes. He disappeared around the back of the barn. 4 minutes. Nothing. Lena's finger tightened on the trigger of her pistol. 4.5 minutes. Then Caleb emerged, and he was dragging something. Charlie. Lena threw open the door and ran outside. The dog was alive but unconscious, foam at his mouth. "Poison," Caleb said grimly. "Someone fed him poisoned meat." "Where are they?" "Close. Has to be." He carried Charlie into the cabin, laying him on the floor. "This was a message. They're saying they can get to us anytime they want." Lena knelt beside the dog, checking his breathing. Shallow but steady. "We need to make him vomit. Get the poison out." They worked together, forcing salt water down Charlie's throat until he started heaving. The dog retched violently, bringing up chunks of meat mixed with something dark and oily. "Is he going to make it?" Lena asked. I don't know. Depends on how much he ate. Charlie's breathing was getting more labored. His eyes rolled back, showing whites. Come on, Lena whispered, stroking his head. Come on, boy, stay with us. The dog convulsed once, twice, then went still. For a horrible moment, Lena thought they'd lost him. Then his chest rose. Fell. Rose again. He's breathing, Caleb said. Relief flooded his voice. He's breathing. They stayed with Charlie for the next hour, making sure he stayed stable. Slowly, the dog's breathing evened out. His eyes opened, unfocused but alive. Good boy, Lena murmured. Such a good boy. They made a mistake, Caleb said quietly. What? Silas and his friends. They thought poisoning the dog would scare us, make us vulnerable. His expression went cold. All they did was make me angry. Caleb, no more waiting, no more defending. He stood up, checking his weapons. They want to fight? I'll give them one. You're going after them. I'm ending this. Then I'm coming with you. Lena, you need to stay with Charlie. Charlie's stable, and you need someone watching your back. She stood to face him. I told you before, we do this together or not at all. They stared at each other, and Lena could see him trying to find an argument that would work. Finally, he gave a sharp nod. Together, but you follow my lead, and if I tell you to run, you run. Understood? Understood. They armed themselves properly. Rifles, pistols, extra ammunition. Lena tied back her hair and changed into her riding clothes. Caleb strapped on a gun belt she'd never seen before, the kind that said he'd worn it for years before coming to Hollow Creek. Where are we going? She asked as they saddled the horses. There's a canyon about 5 miles north. Good hiding spots, water source, easy to defend. If I were planning an ambush, that's where I'd set up. He checked his saddle straps. We go in careful, scout first, and if we see them, we end it. They rode out in the early afternoon, moving slowly and staying alert. The land was familiar to Lena now, every ridge and valley mapped in her mind from months of working the ranch. But it looked different today, dangerous, full of shadows that might hide men with guns. The canyon came into view just before sunset. Caleb signaled for them to dismount and leave the horses tied in a grove of mesquite. They'd approach on foot from here. Stay behind me, he whispered. Step where I step. They moved through scrub brush and around boulders, every sound amplified in Lena's ears. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but her hands were steady on the rifle. Then she heard it. Voices. Low and indistinct, but definitely voices. Caleb held up a hand. Stop. He pointed to a ridge overlooking the canyon floor. They could see from there without being seen. They climbed carefully, rocks shifting under their boots. At the top, they bellied down and looked over the edge. 4 men sat around a small fire. Lena recognized Silas Crow immediately, his arm still bandaged from where she'd shot him. The other 3 were strangers, but their body language spoke of violence and long familiarity with danger. Should have just burned the whole place down with them inside, one of them was saying. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a scar across his cheek. Reed, probably. Where's the fun in that? Silas smiled his cold smile. I want Caleb to know it's coming. Want him to sweat. Want him to lie awake wondering when I'll take everything from him. You're dragging this out too long, another man said, lean and wiry with nervous energy. Webb. Every day we wait is another day the marshals get closer. Then maybe we move tonight. This from the 4th man, who had tattoos running up both arms and eyes like dead fish. Snake, Lena thought. Had to be. Tonight? Reed sounded skeptical. Thought you wanted to make him suffer. I do, but Webb's right. Time to finish this. Silas stood up, looking north toward where the ranch lay. We hit them after midnight, kill Caleb slow, kill the woman quick. Burn what's left. Lena felt ice run down her spine. Beside her, Caleb's hands tightened on his rifle. 4 of them, she whispered. 2 of us. I've had worse odds. When? Kansas. When I turned them in. He glanced at her. I'm going down there. That's suicide. That's ending it before they get to our home. He touched her face gently. I need you to stay here. Cover me from above. If shooting starts, you pick your targets and you don't hesitate. Caleb, please, Lena, Let me do this. She wanted to protest, wanted to tell him they'd find another way. But looking at his face, she knew there was no other way. This had been coming for 10 years. All they could do now was meet it head on. You better come back to me, she said. Plan to. He kissed her once, hard and desperate, then started down the ridge. Lena positioned herself behind a boulder, rifle braced against the rock. From here she had clear sight lines to the canyon floor. Her finger rested beside the trigger. Not on it. Not yet. Caleb walked into the firelight like he owned it. All four men jumped up, hands going to weapons. But Caleb already had his rifle aimed at Silas. "Been a long time," he said calmly. "Caleb." Silas recovered quickly, that cold smile returning. "Saved me a trip. How considerate. Thought we should settle this face to face, man to man. There's 4 of us and 1 of you. That's not man to man. That's execution." "Then make it fair. Just you and me. Your friends stand down. We settle this between us." Silas laughed. "You must think I'm stupid." "No, I think you're proud. And I think you've been waiting 10 years to look me in the eye when you pull the trigger." Caleb's voice didn't waver. "So here I am. Let's finish it." For a moment, Lena thought Silas might actually agree. Then Reed spoke up. "Why are we listening to this? Just shoot him and be done with it." "Because I want him to know why he's dying," Silas said. "I want him to understand what he cost me, cost all of us." "You cost yourselves when you started killing innocent people," Caleb said flatly. "That clerk pulled a gun. He was a kid defending his workplace, and you shot him like he was nothing." Caleb's voice went hard. "That's when I knew what we were, what I was, and I couldn't live with it anymore. So you betrayed us, got good men killed, got criminals arrested. There's a difference." "Not to me." Silas pulled his gun. "Any last words?" "Yeah." Caleb's eyes flicked up to the ridge where Lena was hidden. "Now." Lena fired. The shot caught Reed in the shoulder, spinning him around. Chaos erupted in the canyon. Men dove for cover, guns blazing. Caleb dropped and rolled, coming up behind a boulder. Lena fired again, keeping Webb's head down. 3 more shots, forcing Snake to scramble for cover, but Silas had disappeared. "Where is he?" Lena muttered, scanning the canyon floor through her rifle sight. "Where?" Movement behind her. She spun, but Silas was already there. He'd circled around, climbed the ridge from another direction. His gun was pointed at her head. "Drop it," he said pleasantly. Lena's rifle clattered to the rocks. "Caleb," Silas called down to the canyon. "Come out, or I put a bullet in your wife's head." The shooting stopped. Terrible silence. Then Caleb stepped out from behind his boulder, hands raised. "Don't hurt her." "Why would I listen to anything you say?" "Because this is between us. She's got nothing to do with our history." "She's got everything to do with it. She's the thing you care about, the weakness I can exploit." Silas pressed the gun barrel against Lena's temple. "How's it feel, knowing she's going to die because of you?" Below, the other 3 men had Caleb surrounded. Reed's shoulder was bleeding, but his gun was steady. "Let her go, Silas," Caleb said. "Please, I'm begging you. Let her go and do whatever you want to me." Begging. Now there's something I never thought I'd hear from you. Silas seemed to consider it. "But no. I think I'll kill her first. Let you watch. Let you feel what I felt when you destroyed everything." Lena's mind raced. The pistol. She still had the pistol tucked in the back of her belt. Silas hadn't noticed it. She met Caleb's eyes across the distance, saw him see the calculation in her expression, saw him give the tiniest shake of his head. "Don't." She ignored him. In one motion, Lena threw herself sideways, grabbing for the pistol. Silas fired but missed, the bullet sparking off rock. She rolled, came up shooting. Her first shot went wide. The second caught Silas in the leg. He went down hard, cursing. Below, Caleb moved. Fast as lightning, he shot Reed in the gun hand, disarming him, spun and put a bullet in Webb's chest. The man dropped without a sound. Snake got off one shot that grazed Caleb's arm before Caleb's return fire took him down. Then it was just Silas, bleeding on the ridge, and Caleb climbing up toward them. Lena kept her pistol trained on Silas as Caleb reached them. He looked at her first, eyes scanning for injuries. "I'm okay," she said. "I'm okay." Only then did he turn to Silas. "It's over," Caleb said quietly. Silas laughed, bloody and broken. "You think so?" There'll always be someone else, someone who remembers what you did. You'll never be free of it. Maybe not, but I'll be free of you. He kicked Silas's gun away, then pulled rope from his belt and started binding the wounded man's hands. You should just kill me, Silas said. Be easier. Probably. But I'm done killing people. Done being the man you remember. Caleb finished tying the knots. You're going to trial. Going to prison. And you're going to live with what you did the same way I've had to live with it. Down in the canyon, Reed and Snake were groaning. Webb wasn't moving. Lena climbed down and checked on them while Caleb secured Silas. Reed's shoulder wound was bad, but not fatal. Snake had a bullet in his gut that would kill him if they didn't get help soon. Webb was dead, Lena's bullet having found his heart. She'd killed a man. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She sat down hard, staring at Webb's body. Caleb was beside her immediately. Lena, look at me. She did. You did what needed doing, he said firmly. Nothing more, nothing less. I killed him. You defended yourself, defended me. That's not murder, that's survival. She nodded, not quite believing it yet, but trusting that maybe someday she would. They kept the 3 survivors at gunpoint until Sheriff Callahan arrived with a posse an hour later. Someone in town had heard the gunshots and reported them. The aftermath was messy. Questions, statements, bodies to transport. But the story was clear enough. 4 escaped criminals had threatened the Mercer Ranch, and Caleb and Lena had defended their home. By the time they rode back to the cabin, dawn was breaking. Charlie met them at the door, still weak but alive, tail wagging. Inside, they collapsed at the kitchen table. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Finally, Caleb said, It's over. Really over this time. You sure? I'm sure. Silas was the last one who cared enough to come after me. With him in prison and the others dead, he took a shaky breath. We're free. Lena wanted to believe it, wanted to let go of the fear that had been her constant companion for months, but it was hard to trust that peace might actually last. What do we do now? She asked. Now? Caleb looked around the cabin, their cabin. Now we live. Actually live, not just survive. We work the ranch. We build something good. He stopped, looking at her uncertainly. We try to be happy, if you still want that. With me. Lena reached across the table and took his hand. I shot a man tonight, watched you shoot 3 others, helped you tie up a wounded outlaw, and waited for the law to arrive. And through all of it, I never once wished I was somewhere else. Never once regretted choosing you. Even knowing what it cost? Even knowing. She squeezed his hand. I told you before, you're not just the man you were. You're also the man you became. The one who helps neighbors without asking for thanks. Who rebuilt a barn with the help of a community he thought hated him. Who fights to protect the people he cares about. I've done terrible things. So have I now. But that doesn't define us. Not unless we let it. She stood up, pulling him to his feet. We get to choose who we are moving forward. That's the gift of second chances. He pulled her close, and they stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the quiet kitchen while the sun rose outside. The weeks that followed felt surreal in their normalcy. No riders watching from ridges, no threats in the night, just the daily work of running a ranch and building a life. Silas Crow was tried and sentenced to 20 years in a federal prison 3 states away. Reed got 10 years, Snake died of his wounds before the trial, and Webb was buried in an unmarked grave outside Cedar Falls. The town of Hollow Creek threw another celebration, this one marking the end of the threat that had hung over them all. People who'd been cautiously friendly became genuinely warm. Invitations to dinners and socials arrived regularly. Caleb handled it all with bemusement, still not quite comfortable with being welcomed instead of feared. But he was trying, learning to accept that maybe he'd earned this peace through years of quiet decency. 3 months after the Canyon showdown, Lena's father came to dinner and actually smiled at Caleb. It was a small thing, but it felt like a victory. You've done well with the place, Samuel said, looking around at the well-maintained ranch. Better than I expected. Lena deserves most of the credit, Caleb said. She's the one who convinced the town I wasn't a monster. You convinced them yourself. She just gave them permission to see it. That night, after Samuel had gone home, Lena and Caleb sat on the porch watching stars emerge. It had become their ritual, these quiet evenings together. I've been thinking, Lena said. About? About the future. About what we're building here. And? And I think we should expand. More cattle, maybe some horses to sell. Make this place into something really substantial. Caleb smiled. Big plans. Is that a problem? No, I like it when you have big plans. Means you're thinking long term. Of course I'm thinking long term. This is home. She leaned against him. You're home. He kissed the top of her head. Never thought I'd have this. A home. A wife who actually wants to be my wife. A chance to build something that matters. You have it now. Because of you. Because of both of us. She tilted her head back to look at him. We saved each other, I think. You gave me a way to save my father's ranch. I gave you a reason to believe you deserved saving. That's a heavy thought. It's true, though. We were both drowning in different ways, and somehow we managed to pull each other to shore. They sat in comfortable silence, and Lena reflected on everything that had happened. The desperate bargain that brought them together, the fear and danger that tested them, the community that surprised them both by caring, the violence that could have destroyed them but somehow made them stronger. None of it had been easy. None of it had been smooth or romantic or anything close to a fairy tale. It had been messy and terrifying and hard, but it had also been real, and that mattered more than perfection ever could. Caleb, she said quietly. I love you. She felt him go still, then his arms tightened around her. I love you too, he said, and his voice was rough with emotion. More than I thought I was capable of loving anyone. Good, because you're stuck with me for the long haul. Wouldn't want it any other way. Winter came and went. Spring brought new calves and the first real profits the ranch had seen. Summer brought heat and hard work and a contentment Lena had never known she could feel. One evening in late summer, almost a year after they'd married, Lena had news to share. She found Caleb working on the corral fence and watched him for a moment before speaking. He'd changed over the past year. The hard edges had softened slightly. He smiled more easily, laughed occasionally. He'd never be an entirely easy man. There was too much history for that. But he was healing. They both were. Caleb. He looked up, immediately sensing something in her tone. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Actually, something's very right. She took a breath. I'm pregnant. He froze, hammer suspended mid-swing. You're what? Pregnant. About 3 months, I think. I wanted to be sure before I told you. The hammer fell from his hands. He crossed to her in 3 long strides, pulling her into his arms. We're having a baby, he said, like he couldn't quite believe it. We're having a baby, she confirmed. He pulled back to look at her, and there were tears in his eyes. I don't know how to be a father. Then you'll learn. Same way you learned how to be a husband. Same way you learned how to be part of a community. She touched his face. Same way you learned that your past doesn't have to define your future. What if I mess it up? Then we'll fix it together. That's what we do, remember? We face things together. He kissed her then, gentle and reverent, like she was something precious he was afraid of breaking. Thank you, he whispered against her lips. For what? For choosing me. For staying. For giving me a reason to believe I could be more than what I was. You were always more than what you were. I just helped you see it. The baby came in early spring, a healthy girl with her father's dark hair and her mother's determined expression. They named her Grace because it felt like that's what they'd both been given. Grace Mercer grew up on stories of how her parents met, how her mother had made an impossible choice to save her grandfather's ranch, how her father had offered help when no one else would, how they'd fought outlaws and burned barns and learned to trust each other through sheer stubborn determination. But the story Lena liked to tell best was simpler. Your father fixed a fence for me once, she'd say, holding Grace in her lap on the porch while Caleb worked nearby. He didn't have to. I was a stranger. But he helped anyway because that's who he is underneath all the rough edges. And that's when I started to understand that people are more than their worst mistakes. They're also their quiet kindnesses. Their choices to help when they could walk away. Their determination to be better tomorrow than they were yesterday. Grace wouldn't understand the deeper meaning until she was older. But she'd grow up knowing that her parents had fought for each other, for their home, for the life they'd built from impossible circumstances. She'd know that love wasn't always easy or perfect, that sometimes it started as a desperate bargain and grew into something real through shared hardship and stubborn loyalty. She'd know that second chances were precious things, hard-won and worth fighting for. And most importantly, she'd know that who you were yesterday didn't have to dictate who you became tomorrow. Years passed. The ranch prospered. Samuel Whitaker got to see his granddaughter grow up on land that stayed in the family. Charlie lived to a ripe old age and was eventually replaced by his equally loyal offspring. The town of Hollow Creek grew and changed, but the Mercers remained constants, respected members of a community they'd earned their place in through quiet dedication and genuine care. Caleb never fully escaped his past. Sometimes strangers would recognize his name and give him hard looks. Sometimes he'd wake in the night, haunted by old ghosts that refused to rest. But he had Lena beside him through all of it, and their daughter sleeping down the hall, and a life worth protecting. That was enough. More than enough. On their 10th anniversary, they stood together on the porch, where so many important conversations had happened. Grace was asleep inside, and the ranch was quiet under a sky full of stars. "Do you ever regret it?" Lena asked. "That day I showed up asking for help?" "Not once." Caleb pulled her close. "You?" "Never. Though I'll admit I was terrified at the time." "You hid it well." "I was too desperate to show fear." She smiled. "Seems like a different life now." "It was a different life. We were different people." "Better people now, you think?" Caleb considered it. "I think we're people who learn that being broken doesn't mean you can't heal. That making mistakes doesn't mean you can't make better choices. That sometimes the hardest paths lead to the most worthwhile destinations." "That's very philosophical for an ex-outlaw." "I'm a rancher now. We're naturally wise." He kissed her forehead. "Besides, I had a good teacher." "Who, me?" "You. Your father. This whole damn town that refused to let me keep hiding from myself." He looked out at the land they'd built their life on. "I spent 10 years thinking I didn't deserve peace, didn't deserve happiness or family or any of the good things. And then you showed up and made me prove I was wrong. I didn't make you do anything. You chose it. Every day you choose to be the man you want to be instead of the man you were. We chose it, together. And that, Lena thought, was the truth at the heart of everything. Not the danger they'd faced, or the violence they'd survived, or the obstacles they'd overcome. Not even the love that had grown between them, though that mattered too. The truth was simpler and more powerful than all of that. They'd chosen each other. And then they'd kept choosing each other, every single day, through fear and doubt and darkness and hope. That was what made a life worth living. Not the absence of struggle, but the presence of someone worth struggling alongside. Someone who saw your worst and stayed anyway. Someone who believed you could be better and refused to let you settle for less. In the end, Lena Mercer, once Lena Whitaker, desperate daughter of a failing rancher, learned what her father had tried to teach her all those years ago with his story about chicken coops and foxes. Life would always take things from you, would test you and break you and ask more than you thought you could give. But you could either let that define you, or you could build something better from the wreckage. She and Caleb had chosen to build. And what they'd built, this ranch, this family, this hard-won peace, was more valuable than anything else in the world. Because they'd earned it, together. And that made all the difference.
Like, this Lilia's trying to be IGL, and this Ambessa is trying to coach, and it's just like, these guys are fucking idiots. Yeah, I can land right on top of you, too. I wish. I would only hope to be so lucky. Oh, they didn't get you, which means it's winnable. Good job. I want to push top. He's gonna just dash.
I think we should keep chasing, like, all the fucking waves. Immediately.
Do.
Doing.
I don't know, they're getting desperate for some reason, even though they're winning. 15 seconds for what? What is this Ambessa thing? Hey. Hey Ben, can I get some fucking help over here maybe?